Chapter 1. The Mystery of the Paper Lanterns. A crisp January evening settled over London's West End as Hercule Poirot settled himself in the first-class compartment of the Thames Express. Outside, lamps winked past against a backdrop of winter's early dusk. Captain Hastings, seated opposite, admired the polished mahogany panelling and the plush velvet upholstery. Yet Hastings's brow was furrowed. "Mon ami," Hastings began after a moment's silence, "this summons seems most peculiar. A Chinese-themed soirée at Sir Lionel Bedlington's Hampstead villa. Paper lanterns, fireworks, exotic dancers. Hardly the stuff of true mystery." Poirot adjusted his pince-nez and allowed a thin smile to appear at the corners of his waxed moustache. "Ah, but you underestimate the imagination of those who seek my counsel, Hastings. When one arranges an entire evening around luminescent lanterns, symbols of joy and enlightenment, and yet asks me to attend, it suggests more than mere celebration. There is an undercurrent of fear." Hastings shrugged, unconvinced. "You think someone plans to sabotage the festival?" "Possibly," Poirot replied. "Or to conceal an act of theft, or to send a warning in flames. The ephemeral nature of paper lanterns makes them perfect vehicles for secrets, both visible and hidden." The train slowed, pulling into Chalkford Station. Poirot and Hastings disembarked beneath the station's gaslight glow, where a smartly uniformed footman awaited them. "Sir Lionel's carriage awaits, monsieur," the footman announced, guiding them to a sleek landaulet drawn by two coal-black bays. "My master sends his deepest apologies for the abrupt invitation. He bids you attend without delay." "Thank you," Poirot said, stepping aboard. Hastings followed, tucking his scarf against the night air. The carriage clopped off into the lane leading toward Hampstead Heath. Sir Lionel Bedlington's villa appeared at last. A grand Tudor-style house set back from the road, its leaded windows lit with flickering lantern light. The long drive was lined with lanterns hung from shepherd's crooks, each delicate globe glowing with hues of amber, crimson, and jade. The carriage halted, and Poirot and Hastings descended onto the gravel. The door opened before a butler in evening dress. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, welcome. Sir Lionel awaits in the great hall. Pray follow me." They entered into a vast chamber where a dozen Chinese lanterns hung from the carved oak beams. Their soft glow played across lacquered panels and priceless porcelain vases. At the far end of the room stood Sir Lionel himself, a tall man of dignified, bearing and silvered hair, dressed in a mandarin collar coat of midnight blue silk. "Ah, Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings," Sir Lionel greeted, bowing. His voice was controlled but carried a note of urgency. "Thank you for arriving so swiftly. Let me apologize for the circumstances. Earlier today I received a note, a folded slip hidden inside a lantern's casing, a threat. It warned that at tonight's unveiling of the great paper dragon display, a catastrophe would occur. I do not wish to frighten my guests, so I summoned you discreetly." Hastings's eyebrows rose. "A threat hidden in a lantern? Remarkable." Poirot inclined his head. "Madame la menace, the threat. You have in your hand the clue itself, sir, the instrument of warning." He motioned to the lanterns above. "Pray tell us of the evening's programme." Sir Lionel led them across the hall to an elaborately arranged set of chairs surrounding a central platform. At 8 o'clock, the lantern-bearers will process around the grounds, culminating in the unveiling of the Great Dragon, a structure of hundreds of connected lanterns designed to float upon the ornamental lake. Then fireworks, tea, and a dance. I cannot delay the festivities, for my guests are already assembled." He glanced at his pocket watch. "It is now 7:15. Please indulge me. I wish you to remain close as advisers. You are my principal defence against whatever mischief may be afoot." Hastings and Poirot took seats in the front row as the first guests arrived. Lady Bedlington in a silk cheongsam of emerald green, Lord Fairchild in a dragon-embroidered jacket, and an eclectic company of diplomats, artists, and society dames. Into their hands the butler placed velvet cushions embroidered with paper lantern motifs. At precisely 8, a soft gong sounded. Lantern-bearers, 4 dozen footmen in scarlet vests, entered the hall, each carrying a bamboo pole topped with a glowing orb. They formed a swirling column and filed out through the double doors, their lights bobbing in the night. Poirot remained watching, little grey cells alive. Hastings murmured, "They seem to favour a meandering route through the garden." Yes, Poirot agreed, to display the lantern's effect among the topiary and the wind-sculpted hedges. Yet note, the path leads close to that old oak, whose hollow could conceal a dropped note, or worse. Hastings followed Poirot's gaze to a venerable oak beyond the hall's French windows. Its bark was gnarled, its limbs heavy with lanterns. Moments later, footsteps on gravel announced the procession returning. The bearers strode in single file, but at sight of Sir Lionel's pale face, their formation faltered. One lantern, an enormous crimson sphere, hung askew, its silken covering torn as if clawed. Lady Bedlington gasped, and a murmur of unease swept the crowd. Poirot rose, cane in hand, and moved toward the disrupted lantern. He examined the torn silk, his gloved fingertips brushing the frayed edge. "Remark," he said softly, "that this lantern alone was targeted, though all are plainly of identical make. Someone stripped away this covering deliberately." Sir Lionel approached, voice tight. "If the threat speaks of a calamity at the dragon's unveiling, surely tampering with one lantern is but a first act." Poirot brooded. "Or a warning in itself, a demonstration of capability. Let us inspect the lantern for further clues." He carefully raised the broken lantern to the light, finding inside a scrap of parchment pinned against the bamboo frame. Hastings peered. "The same as your note, sir." Sir Lionel drew the scrap and read aloud. "At the dragon's heart, flame will consume masquerade and man." Gasps rippled through the guests. A dancer in a silken mask clutched her throat. Lady Bedlington's face went ashen. Poirot stepped forward. "The dragon's heart, the central lantern cluster. Flame, so, fire. Consume masquerade and man. 2 targets, those in costume, and perhaps a man, the host himself or another guest. We must prevent any open flame near the dragon." Sir Lionel squared his shoulders. "Very well. I order that no torches, no fireworks approach the structure until we are certain it is safe." He turned to the house staff. "Remove the torches lining the path. Only electric lights from the house to guide the way." Hastings was already conferring with the butler, issuing instructions. Lady Bedlington wrapped herself in Hastings' arm, visibly trembling. Poirot retreated to Hastings's side. "Now, my friend, we must consider who benefits from this threat. The guests include a Chinese diplomat, a rival Oriental art collector, Sir Lionel's niece, the masked dancer, an author of exotic tales, and one shadowy figure known only as Mr. Grey, who requested anonymity." Hastings nodded. "We should question each, but at this moment safety comes first." Poirot's eyes glimmered. "Yes, and we must watch for any concealed incendiary device. Paper lanterns and fireworks are combustible. An incendiary sachet could be hidden in the dragon's frame." Sir Lionel addressed the company. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. For security, we shall proceed directly to the unveiling and cancel the fireworks. Follow me to the lake." The guests, murmuring, filed out through the hall. Poirot paused beside the broken lantern. He lifted the scrap of parchment and studied the handwriting. Elegant flourishes, corners pinched, a curious stroke of the G, reminiscent of scripts seen in rare Tang Dynasty manuscripts. He tucked the scrap into his pocket. "Hastings," he called softly, "observe the paper. It is not ordinary writing stock. It bears the watermark of a rare Celadon mill. I once saw similar paper in the personal stationery of Baron de Vogel, the art collector." Hastings's eyes widened. The fifth guest, Baron de Vogel. He coveted Sir Lionel's Chinese porcelain. This could be a prelude to theft. Poirot nodded gravely. "Let us follow the procession to the lake and watch carefully. Magic and lantern light conceal many things, but they also cast long shadows." The lake edge glimmered under the strings of electric lights hastily strung along the path. Guests clustered on the shore, murmuring their concerns. In the centre floated the great dragon, a sinuous expanse of interconnected lanterns in gold and red, its head poised as if to devour the moon's reflection. Sir Lionel stepped into a small boat, holding a silver pole to guide him to the creature's head. Hastings stood beside Poirot. "Shall we detain the Baron?" "Not yet," Poirot whispered. "We must see how he acts when given opportunity." He watched Baron de Vogel slip from the edge of the crowd, claiming to speak to Lady Bedlington, but instead approaching the dragon's side. Hastings nudged Poirot. "He has a concealed pouch. See?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Indeed, and inside that pouch perhaps a flint or a fuse?" He stepped forward, calling out, "Baron de Vogel, a word if you please." The Baron turned, startled, revealing a folded fuse wire trailing from his sleeve. Hastings moved to block him. The crowd parted as Baron de Vogel drew back his hand, revealing a tiny lantern-shaped incendiary device. Poirot advanced with calm precision. "Baron, step away. That device could ignite the dragon at any moment." The Baron bowed stiffly. "Monsieur Poirot, so perceptive. I admit I intended to burn the dragon, thereby creating panic and looting the guests' valuables in the confusion." Hastings seized the device. Sir Lionel's niece, the masked dancer, swooped down to cover her gasp. Poirot placed a firm hand on the Baron's shoulder. "You have no further need of masquerade, Baron. Your crime is confessed. I shall take you into custody." Cheers rose from the crowd as Sir Lionel rushed forward. "Thank you, Hercule Poirot. Your little grey cells have saved more than paper lanterns tonight. You have saved lives and honour." Poirot inclined his head. "The pleasure, sir, is in preserving the light of joy, even amidst the shadows of malice." As the Baron was escorted to a carriage by constables, the great dragon hung silent but safe upon the lake. The guests, reassured, clustered for tea and sweets served lakeside. Poirot, Hastings, and Sir Lionel shared a cup beneath a canopy of restored lantern light, the ripples of the lake catching each glowing orb in delicate reflection. In that moment, lanterns ceased to be mere decoration. They became symbols of truth revealed, dangers averted, and the steadfast glow of courage in the face of hidden threats. And as the electric strings shimmered overhead, Hercule Poirot, ever the master of secrets, allowed himself a rare, contented sigh. The mystery of the paper lanterns was solved, and once more light had triumphed over darkness. Chapter 2. Shadows Among the Lanterns. The dawn following the failed incendiary attempt found Sir Lionel Bedlington's villa calm once more, its grand facade dignified beneath a pale winter sun. Yet the echoes of last night's mêlée lingered in the corridors. Hushed whispers of lantern sabotage, a firebomb diffused in Baron de Vogel's cloak, and the sight of constables leading a disgraced art collector away. Over breakfast in the oak-panelled dining room, stewed prunes, kippers with capers, and fragrant Darjeeling, Poirot surveyed the assembled company with intent. "Monsieur Hastings," he murmured across the silver tea service, "though the immediate threat has been thwarted, we must remain vigilant. The mystery of the paper lanterns may yet unveil darker designs." Hastings, buttering his toast, nodded. "But, mon ami, Baron de Vogel confessed plainly to a plot of arson and theft. What more could be concealed?" "Ah, but consider," Poirot replied, lifting a sugar cube with elegant precision. "The Baron's motive was avarice, yet the threat note, 'Flame will consume masquerade and man,' implies a more intimate vengeance. The word masquerade suggests someone wearing a mask, someone here for whom a costume hides deeper purpose." At that moment, Lady Bedlington entered, silk cheongsam glinting in the morning light, followed by Lord Fairchild, his embroidered dragon jacket exchanged for a sober tailcoat. Their faces bore a pallor that breakfast could not dispel. "Gentlemen," Lady Bedlington said, seating herself with a slight shiver, "I regret to report a further calamity. One of our guests did not sleep soundly. At dawn, Mr. Simon Ashdown, my late husband's solicitor, was found dead in the conservatory, seated upright before an extinguished lantern, his hands clasped as if in prayer." A collective gasp rose. Hastings nearly choked on his toast. Poirot set down his teaspoon, eyes narrowing behind his pince-nez. "Dead?" Hastings spluttered. "But how? Poison? A fall?" Lord Fairchild's voice trembled. Mrs. Smythe discovered him at first light. His glass of brandy lay untouched. The lantern beside him was cold. I found no signs of violence, no wound, no poisoned vessel, no slip upon the damp tiles. Poirot rose, cane in hand. "Then let us proceed at once to the conservatory. Silence, mes amis. Every moment risks the loss of vital clues." The conservatory lay shrouded in morning mist, the glass panes dulled with condensation, the exotic palms drooping in humid stillness. At its heart stood the very lantern contraption Baron de Vogel had wronged. 16 ivory globes hung in a circle, their wires dangling like mute witnesses. In the centre, on a wrought-iron bench, sat Mr. Simon Ashdown, dead, head bowed, eyes closed. Mrs. Smythe hovered behind the threshold, pallid and trembling. Hastings knelt to inspect the body. His robe's collar is pristine, no sign of struggle, yet his lips are ashen and pursed. Poirot gently lifted a slender hand. "Observe, Hastings, the supple knuckles are imprinted upon themselves." He leaned forward in final restraint rather than collapsed. He circled the bench. "And note how the lantern globes remain unbroken, nor is there soot or smoke about. His demise preceded any conflagration." He turned to Lady Bedlington. Which lantern stood nearest to him? Lady Bedlington indicated a single jade-green sphere. That one. It bore the first threat note. She paused, tears in her eyes. "I thought it wise to preserve it through the night." Poirot approached the lantern and gently tapped its frame. Inside, he found a second scrap of parchment, crisp and folded to conceal its contents. Hastings leaned forward as Poirot extracted the note and read, "Not all who light a lantern hide within its glow. Look to the paper, and you will see the writer's hand." Poirot refolded the note and peered up. A dire puzzle. Mr. Ashdown died beneath a lantern that spoke of hidden writers. We must examine these lantern surfaces, each of their silk casings, for handwriting or discreet signs. Hastings rose, turning a lantern globe in his gloved hands. Yet the silk is so fine. How could we detect ink upon its inner face? Poirot nodded approvingly. "With care and strong light, I will fetch lanterns one by one. Hastings, prepare the lamps from the hall. Lady Bedlington, you shall inspect the benches and pathways for any dropped implements, ink pots, pens, or writing slips." Lady Bedlington curtsied and departed, Mrs. Smythe following to assist. Poirot turned the lantern, peering through its paper shell. "All right, Hastings, shine your lamp here." Hastings lit an oil lamp and held it close to the interior silk. Poirot's sharp eyes detected a slender charcoal smudge at the globe's seam, too precise for accidental grease. He pressed a fingertip to the edge and withdrew a dusky smear of ink. "Ah!" Hastings exclaimed. "That matches the writing on the note, smoky and faint." Poirot replaced the lantern carefully and moved on to the next, each globe demanding the same scrutiny. Within the ivory, the jade and the crimson lanterns, the inner seams bore similar slender smudges, revealing a consistent hand that had traced each sphere's inner rim. 24 lanterns, 24 smudges, Poirot murmured. "That implicates our victim, Mr. Ashdown, in marking each lantern, each slip of paper, and each globe. When did he complete this task?" Hastings consulted his pocket watch. "Late last night, after the Baron's plot was foiled, but before dawn. He would have had to move swiftly among the garden and the hall to mark every lantern in secret." As they worked, tiresome rustlings issued from the conservatory's small shrub alcove. Lady Bedlington and Mrs. Smythe returned, carrying a brass pen nib and a small vial of cobalt-black ink. "Look, Monsieur Poirot," Lady Bedlington whispered. "These were clasped in Mr. Ashdown's fist when they found him." Poirot examined them with clinical precision. The nib matches the smudges, a broad, flat tip, ideal for broad strokes, and the ink, artisanal Chinese formula, identical to that imported for the lantern notes. He turned to the assembled trio. "My friends, Mr. Ashdown wrote the second note, damning all lanterns with smudged ink. Perhaps he sought to expose the author of the threat, or to reveal his own hand in some deception. Yet, why die beneath the green globe?" Hastings scratched his head. Maybe he realized too late that one lantern was poisoned. Poirot glanced at him, approving his deduction. He knelt beside the green lantern and traced its seam with his cane. "Help me lift this globe, Hastings." Together they removed the sphere's top ring. Inside lay a small silk sachet filled with fine grey powder, the lethal contents intended for the dragon display, now repurposed to kill a single man, mercury cyanide. Poirot said softly, "A colourless, odourless poison. One inhaled whiff would stop the heart." Mr. Ashdown discovered this sachet hidden within the dragon lanterns, and in his haste to save his friends, marked the lanterns and confronted the killer. Lady Bedlington covered her mouth. "So he perished by his own courage, exposing the murderer and succumbing to the poison himself." Poirot nodded gravely. The final twist of the paper lanterns, a tale of warnings passed in light and death executed in darkness. He rose, guiding Hastings and Lady Bedlington to the entrance. Downstairs in the library, Poirot seated himself before the hearth, Hastings close by, and Lady Bedlington between them. Sir Lionel paced the carpet, distraught. "Then you believe Ashdown's death was accidental?" Sir Lionel asked. "He stumbled into his own trap?" Poirot steepled his fingers. "No, Sir Lionel. The sachet was hidden only in that one lantern. Its maker, the culprit, expected the dragon's unveiling to disseminate the poison through fire. When that failed, they repurposed it for personal vengeance upon Mr. Ashdown, knowing him to be the first to suspect foul play. Yet who among us had motive to kill the solicitor?" Lady Bedlington asked, tears in her eyes. Poirot considered. "Mr. Ashdown was your financial guardian, knower of every secret in your affairs. He discovered that your late husband's will contained an unannounced codicil, one that disinherited a close relative in favour of an orphanage endowment. That relative, Lord Fairchild, had motive to silence Ashdown and retrieve his inheritance." Lord Fairchild paled. "Ridiculous! I would never. I found the codicil unjust, but murder." Poirot's eyes glinted. "Yet you visited the garden at midnight under the pretext of lantern inspection. You had access to the dragon frames and to the sachet intended for the dragon's heart. When Ashdown confronted you, you seized the sachet's contents and marked each lantern as a warning, then, in haste, afflicted only one globe when you realized last night's failure." Lord Fairchild stammered. I did confront him, but he struck me first, threatening blackmail." In the struggle, the powder spilled. Hastings rose. "But you replaced the sachet, intending it for Ashdown's inhalation." Sir Lionel crossed his arms. "Enough! Hastings, fetch the constable. At once." Moments later, Lord Fairchild stood resigned before the library hearth, constables on either side. Poirot laid out the evidence: the masked footprints, the silk smudges, the seized sachet, and Ashdown's heroic note. Fairchild's shoulders sagged as he admitted guilt, shame in his dark eyes. "I confess," he whispered. "I acted in fear of ruin." Yet Ashdown's guardian heart would not relent. I overreached. Lady Bedlington stepped forward. May justice be tempered with mercy. His crime was dreadful, yet I see his remorse is real. Poirot inclined his head. Justice, madame, will consider both deed and contrition. He turned to Hastings. Let us adjourn, and restore the lanterns to their rightful glow. Certes, evening, the lanterns, cleansed of smudged ink and emptied of poison, glowed once more along the lake's edge. Sir Lionel raised a final toast beneath their light, an offering of gratitude to Hercule Poirot, whose keen mind and compassionate heart had penetrated the mystery of paper lanterns, revealing both villain and victim, and illuminating the path from darkness into the steadied light of truth. Chapter 3. Light Restored. The sun rose pale and clear over Sir Lionel Bedlington's villa, its winter chill tempered by the promise of spring. From the conservatory windows, Lady Bedlington watched the guests depart for their carriages, each carriage bearing away a story of threats foiled and spirits lifted. Captain Hastings appeared at her side, buttoning his greatcoat against the morning air. "Madam," Hastings said quietly, "the festival proceeds with patience and goodwill. Yet I cannot help but wonder how our host fares after such perils." Lady Bedlington offered him a small smile. "Sir Lionel shows a stiff upper lip, Arthur, but I shall see him presently and share news of Baron de Vogel and Lord Fairchild's fate." She paused, her gaze lingering on the path of lanterns still swaying gently in the light breeze. "And you, Monsieur Poirot, will you join us one last time?" "May we?" Poirot replied, emerging from the conservatory with his unmistakable air of both formality and ease. His pince-nez perched on the bridge of his nose, he surveyed the line of lanterns and the glowing lake beyond. There is satisfaction in knowing that, beneath the paper silks, truth has triumphed. They made their way to the library, where Sir Lionel awaited, seated before the hearth with newspapers neatly spread atop the coffee table. At his side stood his solicitor, Mr. Ashwood, who bore a benign expression despite the morning's revelations. "Good morning, my friends," Sir Lionel greeted, rising to offer his hand. His voice was steady, though shadows lurked beneath his eyes. "I trust you slept well after last night's drama?" Poirot inclined his head. "Sleep was sound, Sir Lionel. The little grey cells find rest only once justice is secured." He glanced at Mr. Ashwood. "Your barrister's records, please, sir, when convenient. I wish to ensure that both Baron de Vogel and Lord Fairchild are duly processed." Mr. Ashwood nodded, extracting a sheaf of papers from his briefcase. He handed them to Poirot, who quickly reviewed the formal statements. Baron de Vogel's confession to attempted arson and theft, and Lord Fairchild's admission to concealing the lethal sachet meant for Mr. Ashdown. "Both men will face charges at Bow Street," Mr. Ashwood confirmed. "The barony's heirship rests on his trial. Lord Fairchild will stand before the magistrate for attempted murder and manslaughter, given Mr. Ashdown's posthumous exoneration." Sir Lionel cleared his throat. "I wish only that my household can move forward without fear. Lady Bedlington and I have decided to donate the dragon lanterns to the local school's arts programme, so that each child may learn the art of illumination without danger." Lady Bedlington's eyes shone. "Yes, let their radiance educate rather than threaten." Hastings relaxed into an armchair. "A noble gesture, madam. The lanterns will light young imaginations rather than conceal poison." Poirot rolled the papers into his journal. "And you, Sir Lionel, have learned a lesson dearer than any lesson in art or culture. That light, whether from paper lantern or human kindness, must be tended with vigilance." Sir Lionel bowed his head gravely. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot shall never take light for granted again." Later that morning, the household staff gathered in the servants' hall for news of the guest's departure. Mrs. Smythe, flour-dusted from her baking, and Mrs. Bryant, trimmed in her pastel apron, exchanged relieved smiles alongside Mr. Thompson, the butler, whose posture remained as impeccable as ever. "Mr. Thompson," Mrs. Smythe said, with a rare note of mirth, "we survived a firebomb, a murder, and the kidnapping of a masked dancer. Shall I take my leave of all disturbances at once?" Mr. Thompson inclined his head with gentle humour. "Madam, I trust this house now offers only the occasional burnt toast or garden snake." He raised a finger, "But I am proud of every one of you for maintaining composure." Mrs. Bryant pressed her hands together. "It was loyalty that guided us, not fear." A chorus of agreement followed, as Meredith Phillips, the gardener's apprentice, entered with a wheelbarrow of daffodil bulbs. He halted at the threshold, flushed with the crisp air, and faced his fellows. "I've brought these bulbs for the lantern beds," he announced. "Madame Bedlington asked that, where poison once lay, new spring flowers shall shine." Mrs. Smythe clapped her hands softly. "A bright idea, Meredith. Paper lanterns and daffodils. What could be more cheery?" By afternoon, the villa's grounds teemed with spring's first labour. Lady Bedlington, Hastings and Poirot led the planting of daffodils beneath the lantern-lined paths. Sir Lionel worked beside them, trowel in hand, his silk coat-sleeves rolled up. Lady Bedlington knelt to press a bulb into its hole. "Each flower, like a lantern, will open to catch the sun." She looked to Hastings. "When will the village children arrive for their lantern workshop?" Hastings consulted his pocket-book. "At 4 o'clock. Reverend Vaughan leads the crafts. Dr. Sinclair provides refreshments." Poirot tied his gloves with neat precision. "Then we have time to complete the beds, and to place a final emblem of hope at the dragon's heart." He produced the jade-green lantern that had held the poison sachet, now cleansed and shining. "I propose we fill this lantern with blossoms from your spring garden, madam." Lady Bedlington's eyes brightened. "Yes, let it hang in place of the dragon's head, a symbol that nothing will henceforth be consumed by flame." Sir Lionel placed an arm around his wife's shoulders as they stood. "Then let us proceed." Together they carried the green lantern to the dragon's head and nestled a wreath of daffodil blooms within. Hastings stepped back and lit the tender, flame within illuminating the flowers in soft gold. A hush fell. The dragon's head glowed with new life, its horned silhouette pricked with pale yellow. Lady Bedlington placed her hand upon the lantern's bamboo frame. "Here," she said softly, "we demonstrate that even the deadliest threat can be transformed by beauty and courage." As the afternoon sun dipped low, village children arrived, in a chattering throng, each clutching paper lantern frames and silken paints. Under Reverend Vaughan's gentle instruction, they decorated lanterns with flowers and verses of hope, their laughter echoing against the villa's walls. Dr. Sinclair distributed cups of lemonade limned with edible petals, and the orchestra of small voices wove a tapestry of cheerful noise. Poirot watched the scene with satisfaction. He joined Hastings beneath the lantern aisle, where the daffodils nodded in the breeze. "My friend," Hastings said, "we have seen fear and death, but also renewal. What do you make of our final tableau?" Poirot tapped his cane gently. "It is the portrait of humanity, shadows and light woven together. But tonight we allow the light to prevail." As dusk fell, the procession filed out once more, this time without dread. The children paraded their painted lanterns along the meandering paths, while guests followed with lanterns of their own, illuminating the daffodils beneath the dragon's benevolent gaze. At the garden gate, Lady Bedlington paused and looked to her companions. "Thank you, Hercule," she said, offering him a warm smile. He bowed. "Madame, it has been my honour to watch the lantern's mystery resolve into a celebration of life." Hastings squeezed her hand, and to see the heart of man, once inclined to malice, embrace compassion instead. Under the softly glowing lanterns, the party continued late into the evening. Music, lantern dances, and the shared promise that no flame would again be kindled in darkness. In this final chapter of Paper Lamps and Spring Flowers, Sir Lionel's villa stood as testament to the power of hope and the enduring light of the human spirit, and Hercule Poirot, having restored both lanterns and lives, quietly slipped away into the night, ever ready for the next mystery. Chapter 4. The Secret Among Ashes. The morning after the lantern workshop dawned with pale sunlight filtering through the conservatory's steamed glass. Sir Lionel Bedlington sat at his breakfast table, staring into his untouched porridge. Across the table, Lady Bedlington stirred her tea, her mind still heavy with the memory of Mr. Simon Ashdown's final, fatal discovery. Captain Hastings polished his spectacles, while Hercule Poirot, seated between them, methodically rearranged the day's correspondence. "Sir Lionel?" Poirot said at last, setting down an envelope. "It appears Mr. Ashdown's personal effects have vanished. His desk in the study shows no papers, no briefcase, nothing to explain what he found in the dragon lanterns. Yet I suspect the final note he left us may point to the missing item." Hastings frowned. "You mean the note hidden inside the green lantern? Look to the paper, and you will see the writer's hand." "Precisely," Poirot replied. "Mr. Ashdown wrote that second warning in broad strokes, smudging ink on each lantern's seam. He sought to expose his foe. But he also hinted at paper, perhaps a document, a will codicil, or a contract, hidden within one of those lanterns." Sir Lionel drew in a breath. "Ashdown discovered my late cousin's will contained clauses inconsistent with our family's known intentions. He believed someone manipulated the bequest. If that document is still hidden in the lanterns, we must recover it." Lady Bedlington rose. "Then let us begin anew in the conservatory. The dragon frame remains intact. Perhaps we missed a secret compartment." They finished breakfast rapidly, and by 10 o'clock the group regrouped before the great double doors of the conservatory. The footman still awaited orders to remove the dragon and restore the lanterns to the school. Now, however, the great dragon would yield up its final secret. Inside, the conservatory smelled of damp earth and jasmine. The dragon, an intricate lattice of silken lanterns in red and gold, hung motionless above the ornamental lake, its head at the centre where Ashdown had perished. Hastings and the footman stood ready with padded gloves and soft brushes. Poirot, cane in hand, directed the operation. First, Poirot said, we examine each lantern edge for signs of recent repair. That is, a seam re-sewn or taped over. Then we look for pockets or false bottoms in the bamboo frames. Finally, we inspect the dragon's head for hollow supports. Lady Bedlington knelt beneath the chandelier of lanterns and ran her fingers along a gilt seam. This silk feels slightly stiffer here, almost like a hidden lining. Hastings knelt beside her, lifting the lantern. Beneath its base, they found a narrow slit, barely visible where the silk had been carefully folded. Poirot gestured. Ah, here is our first clue. Hastings and Lady Bedlington pried gently at the seam, revealing a yellowing parchment folded tightly. Poirot caught it deftly and unfolded the paper before the assembled company. It was Mr. Ashdown's handwriting. To whomever finds this, within the dragon's head lies the true codicil, the one annulled from the public record. It bears the signature of the late Lord Bedlington, restoring his primary heir, our host, Sir Lionel, before omissions by fiery hand. Beware the ink that binds promises, for fire may erase all but truth. A murmur rippled through the group. Sir, Lionel's brows lifted. My inheritance was always unquestioned. If Ashdown discovered a lost codicil, someone must have removed it from my father's archives. Lady Bedlington pressed a hand to her chest. This was what he fought to reveal. But why hide it in a lantern? Poirot nodded. Knowing the saboteur planned to ignite the dragon, Ashdown hid the codicil there, forcing his adversary to uncover it or perish alongside the fold. In his heroism, he gambled fire against falsehood. Hastings tapped the parchment. Then who replaced the public codicil in the first place? Sir Lionel's eyes darkened. Only my cousin Lionel Fairchild, before he inherited the title, in name, but lost it in shame. He stood to lose all if the true codicil came to light. Poirot closed his eyes briefly. Lord Fairchild's motive, then, spanned theft of name and legacy. He removed the document from the study archives and concealed it here, trusting that fire would guard his secret. Lady Bedlington drew a trembling breath. But now the codicil returns to my hands. Sir Lionel laid a steadying hand on her shoulder. Yes, Ashdown has secured my rightful inheritance, even at the cost of his life. Poirot folded the parchment with care. We must deliver this to Mr. Ashwood at once, that the public record be amended. Then justice will stand, unassailable. Hastings offered his arm to Lady Bedlington. Shall I fetch the solicitor, madam? She nodded, and with Hastings gone, Poirot and Sir Lionel prepared to dismantle the dragon, each lantern carefully unwired and catalogued. As they worked, Poirot paused before the green lantern still containing Ashdown's note. He tapped the frame. Mon cher ami, Mr. Ashdown wrote this final warning with the full knowledge that his discovery might consign him to ashes. Yet, in doing so, he preserved truth for us. Sir Lionel's eyes glistened. Then let us honour his sacrifice by ensuring the codicil is filed without delay. By noon, the dragon had been dismantled, and the lantern frames stored in the ballroom for the children's workshop. Hastings returned with Mr. Ashwood, who received the codicil with solemn gratitude. Sir Lionel, Mr. Ashwood declared. "With this codicil, the will is amended to reflect your father's true intentions. I shall record it in the public registry, immediately." He bowed to Lady Bedlington, then again to Sir Lionel. Sir Lionel, emotion catching his voice, replied, "Thank you, Mr. Ashwood. You honour Mr. Ashdown's memory." With the codicil in safe hands, Poirot suggested a final visit to the library's safe, where the public record had once resided. There they found the original envelopes, one empty, bearing their baronial seal, the other containing the forged codicil. Poirot examined both. "The forged codicil's paper is of inferior quality," he noted. Mr. Ashdown likely recognised its false grain immediately, yet our culprit believed no one would see beyond the seal. Sir Lionel's lip trembled. He gambled on my ignorance, and nearly succeeded. Poirot handed him the forged document. "Burn it now, Sir Lionel, as it belongs only in ash." Sir Lionel set it aflame in the hearth, watching it curl to black before the real codicil took its rightful place in the safe. That afternoon, as sunlight spilled through stained-glass windows, Lady Bedlington entered the library to find Hastings and Poirot closing the safe's heavy door. Sir Lionel joined them, placing the genuine codicil upon the lectern. "Now at last," Sir Lionel said, voice firm, "we can close this chapter." Hastings grinned. "And I, for one, shall attend no more lantern festivals, save those of the drawing-room." Poirot allowed himself a rare laugh. "Perhaps in gentle candlelight, Hastings, but beware. Where light glows, shadows may linger until truth reveals all." Lady Bedlington set a hand upon Poirot's arm. "Thank you, Hercule. You have illuminated the darkest corners of our affairs." He inclined his head. "Madame, we must ever tend the light, lest paper lanterns and codicils alike slip into shadows once more." As they left the library, the final flap of paper, burned, revealed, and restored, marked the end of the mystery of the paper lanterns. Yet in their hearts, the glow of justice and memory would endure, guiding them beyond every flicker of doubt, into the steadfast dawn of truth. Chapter 5. Echoes in the Study. The late afternoon sun slanted through the tall, mullioned windows of Sir Lionel Bedlington's private study, casting long rectangles of golden light across worn Persian rugs, and the massive mahogany desk at its centre. Bookshelves lined every wall, their spines a rainbow of leather and cloth, while a crackling fire in the hearth lent warmth to the chill March air. Lady Bedlington, Captain Hastings, and Hercule Poirot gathered before the desk. Sir Lionel perched, on its edge, the newly authenticated codicil resting in his grasp like a talisman of restored order. "Now that the will is secure," Sir Lionel said, voice low with relief, "there remains the matter of Mr. Ashdown's affairs, his papers, his personal correspondence. He had no family, so I must appoint an executor to settle his estate. It seems only fitting that you, Monsieur Poirot, should oversee this curious legacy." Poirot inclined his head with modest pleasure. "Sir Lionel, I accept, though with the utmost solemnity. Mr. Ashdown's devotion to truth begs that his final confidences be honoured." Hastings leaned against the desk, watching the interplay of firelight on their faces. "We'll need to examine his personal effects, his briefcase, his desk drawers, and, of course, any locked compartments." Sir Lionel's eyes lifted. "Mr. Thompson has already delivered Ashdown's desk key. His briefcase, however, is as yet unaccounted for. Lady Bedlington caught her husband's gaze. He must have carried it with him last night to the festival grounds. Perhaps one of the footmen retrieved it after the chaos. Poirot tapped his cane on the parquet. The butler can summon those footmen now. In the meantime, I propose we inspect Mr. Ashdown's desk and journals here. His last, crucial discovery may have gone beyond the codicil we found. He hinted at documents beyond bequests, suggesting another secret. A footman appeared at the door. "Your servant's lantern, sir. They found this bag near the Id, Dragon's Head by the lake." He handed Sir Lionel a small leather satchel stamped with Ashdown's initials. Sir Lionel accepted it with care. "Thank you." He set it upon the desk beside Poirot. "Then let us see what further mysteries await." Poirot knelt on the rug and unbuckled the satchel's strap. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, several envelopes sealed with Ashdown's personal seal, and a thick sheaf of letters tied with ribbon. Hastings moved chairs into a semicircle, while Lady Bedlington and Sir Lionel watched in near silence. Poirot removed the journal first, inspecting its clasp. "This journal is Ashdown's private confidant," Poirot observed. "He recorded not only financial affairs, but his innermost thoughts. Let us peruse the final entries, those written last night." He opened the journal to the last page, reading quietly. "I have restored Sir Lionel's rightful inheritance beneath the dragon's glow, but my duty demands I unearth one final truth. In these pages lies the key to his cousin's ruin, and to the greater security of Bedlington Villa. Tomorrow I shall secure these letters in the dragon's heart, but fate carried me to the lantern itself, where death claimed me instead. May this journal find its way to Monsieur Poirot's discerning hand." Poirot folded the journal shut. Ashdown believed he could hide evidence within the dragon's structure, perhaps letters incriminating another party. And when his plan brought him to the Green Lantern, he swapped the codicil for these items, then succumbed to poison. Lady Bedlington pressed her hand to her throat. But what letters? And to whom were they addressed? Poirot reached for the sealed envelopes. Each bore a name in Ashdown's spidery hand. One to Lady Bathurst, another to Mr. Edmund Carlyle, and a third unmarked. He sliced the ribbon's knot, extracted the first letter, and handed it to Sir Lionel. "You read, sir," he suggested. Sir Lionel unfolded the letter to Lady Bathurst, his expression darkening. "My dear lady, I write in confidence. Your late husband's business partner, Mr. Carlyle, embezzled funds from the Far East venture you both financed. Carlyle's influence has kept this quiet, but sleep denies me peace. Enclosed are the documents proving his treachery. I shall entrust you with their custody in the Dragon Lantern. May justice find swift course." Sir Lionel's lip trembled. Bathurst and Carlyle, both guests at last night's soirée. He looked at Hastings. "We must question them immediately." Poirot retrieved the second letter and read aloud to Lady Bedlington. "Mr. Carlyle, though Sir Lionel's public affairs proceed without tarnish, your secret dealings threaten the reputation of every associate. I have delivered proof to Lady Bathurst and preserved a set in the third envelope, to be opened in the event of my untimely demise. May you find the courage to confess." Hastings ran a hand through his hair. Ashdown's final act was twofold. to ensure Sir Lionel's inheritance and to unmask Carlyle's fraud. Hiding those papers among paper lanterns was brilliant, yet tragic. Poirot held the third envelope aloft. This remains unaddressed. Let us examine it for further instruction. He broke the wafer seal and drew forth a single sheet. To the discoverer. In this envelope lies the seal impression of Carlyle's forged ledgers, proof so damning that no plea of ignorance shall succeed. Place these alongside Lady Bathurst's documents, then confront Carlyle within the library at noon. The truth, once aired, shall be your final defence. Lady Bedlington's eyes filled with tears. Ashdown guided us to a chamber in the library. He foresaw that only a public reckoning could undo Carlyle's deceit. Sir Lionel nodded, and so we shall keep his final appointment. We must gather Lady Bathurst, Mr. Carlyle, and our advisers to witness the evidence. At 11 o'clock, the mansion's front hall buzzed with hushed murmurs. Lady Bathurst, a dignified woman in mourning silk, and Edmund Carlyle, pale but composed, arrived under Sir Lionel's summons. Doctor Sinclair offered cordial comfort, while Reverend Vaughan lingered by the staircase. Poirot, Hastings, and Sir Lionel escorted the two accused into the East Library, where the hearth glowed and tall windows framed the budding spring garden. Sir Lionel placed the 3 envelopes on the library's lectern. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice resonant, "Mr. Simon Ashdown entrusted me with these documents. They reveal a conspiracy to embezzle funds from the joint venture of Lady Bathurst and Mr. Carlyle. I now present Ashdown's proof, uncovered through his final sacrifice." He opened the first envelope to Lady Bathurst and handed her the documents. Carlyle's bank drafts, account books with forged signatures, and correspondence confirming his clandestine withdrawals. Lady Bathurst's breath caught as she read. Tears welled in her eyes. "I had no idea," she whispered. "My husband trusted him absolutely. But this is undeniable." Sir Lionel turned to Carlyle. "Mr. Carlyle, you were entrusted with Lady Bathurst's fortune. These ledgers bear your hand. What have you to say?" Carlyle's composure cracked. He glanced at Poirot, whose steely gaze offered no sanctuary. Carlyle's voice trembled. I never meant harm. The venture's fortunes failed, and I feared ruin for us both. I tried to cover shortfalls, convincing myself it would level in time. But Simon discovered the discrepancy. He threatened exposure, and he bowed his head. "I feared the dragon's destruction less than the ruin of my reputation. I never sought to kill Mr. Ashdown." Hastings's jaw clenched. "You did hide poison in the lantern to assassinate Sir Lionel, yet Ashdown intercepted it and paid the price." Carlyle looked up, shame flooding his eyes. "I acted in desperation. I confess it now. I beg forgiveness." Poirot stepped forward. "Forgiveness is for the heart, not for the law. Your confession shall be noted. Lady Bathurst, you may choose, press charges or show mercy." Lady Bathurst, trembling, regarded Carlyle. After a long pause, she spoke. "Edward, if you are truly remorseful, I will not condemn you to prison. Instead, you shall restore every penny you took, working alongside me to rebuild what was lost. Let justice be recompense, not vengeance." Carlyle rose, tears in his eyes. "Thank you, Emily. I vow to make amends." Poirot nodded. A measured mercy, a fitting close. He turned to Sir Lionel. And as for the villains of the Dragon's tale, they have been unmasked. Let us honour Simon Ashdown's memory by renaming our lanterns Ashdown Lights, so that they may illuminate truth rather than conceal threats. Sir Lionel smiled. An excellent tribute. At tomorrow's gathering, the lanterns shall bear his name. That afternoon, as sunlight warmed the budding rose garden, Lady Bedlington, Sir Lionel, and their companions prepared the lanterns for their renaming ceremony. Hastings and Poirot affixed small brass plaques beneath each bamboo frame, engraving Ashdown Light in memory of Simon Ashdown. Reverend Vaughan and Dr. Sinclair blessed the lanterns with words of hope, while Lady Bathurst and Carlyle worked side by side, their partnership reborn in trust. When evening fell, the lanterns glowed once more along the lake's edge, their reflections dancing on the water's surface like living stars. Guests gathered to witness the unveiling. Sir Lionel raised his glass in a toast to Ashdown's sacrifice, to Lady Bathurst's forgiveness, and to the enduring power of truth over darkness. Hastings turned to Poirot, who watched the lanterns flicker in silent tribute. "Another mystery solved, Hercule," Hastings said softly. Poirot's eyes lingered on the golden lights. "Yes, Hastings, and another reminder that light, once kindled by courage, will forever guide those who seek the path of justice." Beneath the paper lanterns, the Barrowlith residents stood redeemed. A home restored, a community united, and the memory of one brave man illuminating every next step. Chapter 6. Farewell to Flame Winter's grip had loosened at last, and the garden paths of Bedlington Villa lay trimmed and dry beneath a pale March sun. The great floodlights that once illuminated the dragon display now stood silent, their place taken by strings of softer Ashdown lights, each lantern gently inscribed in brass with the name of Sir Simon Ashdown, hero, martyr, and keeper of secrets. Under these glowing orbs, Lady Bedlington, Sir Lionel, Captain Hastings, and Hercule Poirot gathered one final time before the evening's departure supper, to honour both the past trials and the new bonds forged in their wake. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and early crocus, and birdsong drifted through the open conservatory doors. Within, the long oak table was set for 6. Sir Lionel at its head, Lady Bedlington to his right, and Hastings, Poirot, Lady Bathurst, and Mr. Carlyle arrayed in order of their recent adventures. Crystal goblets caught the afternoon light, and the silver candelabra stood ready to glow come dusk. Sir Lionel rose as the company assembled. His countenance held both gravity and relief. "Friends," he began, voice warm, "tonight we sup in peace where before we feared fire and treachery. Let us give thanks for courage, particularly that of Monsieur Poirot and Captain Hastings, and for mercy, as shown by Lady Bathurst. And let us remember Simon Ashdown, whose truth burned brighter than any flame." A murmur of assent rose, and glasses were lifted in a clear, resonant toast. Poirot inclined his head gravely, acknowledging the honour. Hastings lifted his glass to all 3, truth, courage, and mercy. Lady Bathurst, seated between Carlyle and Lady Bedlington, raised her glass next. "To Simon Ashdown," she said softly. "May his name shine always in these lights and in our hearts." Tears shimmered in her eyes, but her voice was steady. They drank, and the table settled into comfortable conversation. Lady Bedlington poured a roasted partridge terrine, its aroma earthy with truffle, and Hastings carved thin slices of spring lamb, glazed with honey and mustard. Mrs. Smythe, standing discreetly at the sideboard, brought bread warm from the wood, oven, and a basket of fresh herbs for garnish. The mood was one of gentle conviviality, at last unburdened by fear. As plates were filled, Poirot turned to Sir Lionel. "Your lanterns, once bent to dark designs, now serve to educate the village, youth in the arts. What may we expect from the ancestor ceremony tomorrow, when the orphanage children bring their own creations?" Sir Lionel's eyes shone. "A marvellous sight. Each child's lantern will carry a verse for Simon Ashdown, a poem of hope or gratitude. We shall attach them to the dragon's wings now, repurposed to symbolically carry forth his memory." Hastings chuckled. A fitting tribute. Who could doubt that children's lanterns would outshine any threat of fire? Lady Bedlington smiled. Indeed, fire, once destructive, will now be used to light their lamps, safety tested and overseen by the fire brigade, of course. At mention of the brigade, Mr. Carlyle, recently restored to Lady Bathurst's trust, pushed back his chair. "If I may, I should like to offer my own thanks to Simon Ashdown through my work. I propose establishing a scholarship in his name for orphaned students who show aptitude in law and finance. Let his legacy guide future stewards of justice." Lady Bathurst squeezed his hand. "Edward, you honour Simon's memory by dedicating yourself to restitution, and now to education. I accept your proposal with pride." Carlyle's eyes glistened with gratitude as Hastings poured him a second glass of wine. Poirot watched with quiet approval. The man who once plotted deceit now pledges scholarships. As the main course concluded, a delicate soufflé of cheese and leeks, the conversation turned to lighter fare. Hastings regaled the table with his account of rescuing the dragon's head from the lake's chill waters, bungling only slightly the timing of the rescue. Lady Bedlington laughed, remembering how Hastings had nearly slipped into the reeds chasing the floating lantern frame. Even Carlyle cracked a smile, and Lady Bathurst dabbed her eye. When dessert arrived, strawberries and cream with spun sugar lantern flames atop each parfait, the room warmed further with contentment. Poirot lifted his spoon. "Mes amis, let us reflect on the symmetry of our tale. Paper lanterns borne aloft to symbolize light, yet they concealed both poison and promise. But through courage, truth, and mercy, we have rewritten their meaning." Sir Lionel inclined his head. "To light restored, may every lantern henceforth serve to unite, to guide, and to remember." Glasses chimed again in the soft lamplight, and Lady Bathurst rose. I believe Simon would have raised his glass too, had he not sacrificed himself for us. Her voice caught. "Let this supper be his final toast." They drank in solemn unity, and the last notes of conversation drifted into a peaceful ease. Outside, the dragon frame lay silent beneath a sky of early stars, while the Ashdown lights glimmered like watchful fireflies across the garden. After supper, Hastings lingered by the doorway. "Monsieur Poirot, I hear your train departs at dawn. Would you join me for one final stroll before your journey?" Poirot folded his napkin neatly. "With pleasure, mon ami." He placed a gentle hand on Sir Lionel's shoulder. "Thank you for your hospitality, and for the lessons in lantern lore. I depart with both enjoyment and enlightenment." Sir Lionel clasped his hand warmly. "And I thank you, Hercule. May your travels remain unshadowed by mystery, until the next call." As Hastings and Poirot stepped into the cool night, Lady Bedlington and Lady Bathurst stood at the door to bid them farewell. Poignant farewells were curt and heartfelt, punctuated by laughter and promise. In the moonlit garden, Hastings and Poirot paused beneath the line of Ashdown lights. Hastings inhaled deeply. "Well, Poirot," he said, "another case closed, another light extinguished only to burn brighter in memory." Poirot surveyed the lanterns, their silk sides rustling softly in the breeze. "Yes, Hastings, and in every flicker we see that even the darkest intent can be transformed by truth, illumined by the human heart." He drew a small silver notebook from his coat. "Permit me a final record. The paper lanterns, once instruments of threat, now guide the young toward hope. May Simon Ashdown's lantern never dim." Hastings patted him on the shoulder. "A fine epitaph, mon ami." They walked on beneath the glowing orbs, their footsteps light upon the gravel. Within Bedlington Villa, a final lantern was hung at the front gate, ready to guide visitors to warmth, safety, and the enduring promise that every light, however paper-thin, can shine with integrity when tended with courage and compassion. Chapter 7. Lanterns of Promised Dawn broke over Bedlington Villa with a gentle pink light, the first to dispel the night's shadows. Lady Bedlington and Sir Lionel stood on the terrace overlooking the garden where the final ceremony would soon take place. Under the Ashdown lights, the very paper lanterns that had once concealed doom now hung as emblems of hope. Beneath them, a circle of children from the local orphanage gathered, each clutching a small lantern they had crafted themselves and adorned with drawings or poems in honour of Simon Ashdown. Captain Hastings and Hercule Poirot joined their hosts, each carrying a basket of fresh primroses to plant at the base of the old oak tree, Ashdown's meeting place in life, and symbol of his steadfast character in death. The air was crisp, birdsong vibrant, and even the early spring breeze felt, infused with promise. Sir Lionel raised a hand for silence. "Friends, children, ladies and gentlemen, today we fulfill our vow to transform fear into light. Simon Ashdown taught us that truth must be protected, even at the greatest cost. Now, we entrust these lanterns, your lanterns, to carry his name and his values into every corner of our community." He nodded to Lady Bathurst, who stepped forward with a flame in hand. "Each child will speak a verse," she said, voice warm, "and then light their lantern. Let their words and their lights honour Simon's sacrifice and your own dreams." One by one, the children stepped into the circle. Emily, a shy girl of 8, held her lantern high. Painted on its silk was a trembling heart and a single daffodil. She read in a trembling voice, "Under Ashdown's light we stand, truth clasped tight within our hand. May our steps be bold and kind, as his memory leads our mind." With that, Emily touched her match to the candle within. Her lantern blazed softly, and the crowd murmured in heartfelt approval. Thomas, a sturdy boy of 10, carried a lantern adorned with swirling flames painted gold. He recited, "When paper burns and fire glows, courage in our hearts still grows. Ashdown's truth will never fade. In every light his vow is made." He flicked his flame, and his lantern joined the circle's radiance. Isabella, 9 years old, wore her mother's brooch, a silver robin. On her lantern she had painted a small bird taking flight. She spoke clearly. "A robin sings at morning's break. As lantern lights through darkness wake, may every song and every gleam uphold Ashdown's living dream." And so the lanterns glowed, in steady rhythm, each child's verse kindling new warmth in every heart. When the last lantern flickered to life, Reverend Clara Vaughan stepped forward. Bible in hand, she offered a blessing. "May the memory of Sir Simon Ashdown inspire us to seek truth, to act with courage, and to love with mercy. May these lights guide us now and evermore." Her voice carried across the garden, mingling with the soft hum of bees that had awoken to spring's promise. Lady Bedlington and Sir Lionel knelt to plant the primroses at the old oak's base. Sir Lionel placed his hand over Emily's as she lowered the first bulb into the earth. Lady Bedlington followed with the last, shading her eyes against the sun. Poirot observed with serene satisfaction. Hastings, beside him, whispered, "Mon ami, this is the true reward of every mystery solved, a community united in purpose." Poirot inclined his head. "Yes, Hastings, we have guided the lanterns from threat to promise. Now they serve to illuminate young hearts." As the ceremony concluded, guests dispersed to the conservatory for refreshments, lemon tarts, elderflower cordial, and petits fours in lantern shapes. Mr. Thompson poured tea and directed patrons to small tables where Mrs. Smythe and Mrs. Bryant had arranged paper flowers and pastel napkins. Maurice Tilney quietly distributed certificates, each child's name printed in gold script, declaring them Ashdown lantern-bearers in memory of Sir Simon. Lady Bathurst embraced each child, praising their courage and creativity. Hastings joined in, offering high fives and warm smiles. Carlyle, standing a bit apart, clutched his scholarship proposal, which he would deliver to Lady Bathurst after he had finalized its details. His eyes held contrition and hope in equal measure. Sir Lionel approached Poirot and Hastings near the lantern-lined corridor. "My friends, I cannot thank you enough. Without your guidance, this villa would still tremble with fear. Instead, it radiates light." Hastings placed a hand on Sir Lionel's shoulder. "You did the rest, sir, choosing mercy over vengeance, hope over despair." Poirot tipped his cane. "And you, Sir Lionel, have proven that even the greatest threats can be reborn as blessings." As evening fell and the last guests departed, Lady Bedlington and Sir Lionel invited Poirot and Hastings to a quiet supper in the study, a simple repast of chicken broth, fresh bread, and soft goat cheese, beneath a line of diminutive Ashdown lights strung across the ceiling. The fire crackled as they sat with papers spread before them. The final arrangements for Carlyle's scholarship, the plans for the lantern transfer to the village school, and the legal filing of the codicil. Lady Bedlington lifted her glass of port. "To Simon Ashdown," she said, voice full, "may his truth continue to light our way." They drank in solemn tribute, Carlyle, present now and seated respectfully, bowed his head. Hastings offered him an encouraging nod. Carlyle returned it with grateful eyes. Poirot allowed himself a rare contented smile. In solving the paper lanterns, we have shown that truth, once exposed, shines brighter than any fire. He paused, meeting each gaze in turn. But now, my friends, it is time for me to depart. The little grey cells must attend to other puzzles. Hastings rose. My train will call for you at midnight, Poirot. I shall see you off. Sir Lionel and Lady Bedlington escorted Poirot to the front door. The villa's windows glowed from within, and the lanterns shimmered in the canopy of spring stars overhead. They pressed warm farewells upon him. At the gate, Hastings awaited with the carriage. Poirot paused, looking back at the lit villa. To light restored, he murmured, and to honour repaid. He stepped into the carriage beside Hastings, tipping his hat to the glowing home. As the carriage rattled away along the gravel drive, the Ashdown lights seemed to flicker in salute, each lantern a testament to one man's courage, a community's compassion, and the enduring power of truth turned to promise. Chapter 8. The Lantern's Last Glow. The morning's pale light filtered through the high windows of Bedlington Villa, illuminating the long corridor where the Ashdown lights still hung like silent sentinels. Their gentle glow, a reminder of Sir Simon Ashdown's sacrifice, lent a warm halo to the polished stone floor. Lady Bedlington, wrapped in a light shawl of the palest jade, paced slowly beneath them, reflecting on the days that had passed since the children's ceremony. The air was hushed. The villa had settled into a peaceful rhythm at last. In the library, Captain Hastings and Hercule Poirot examined the final lantern frame, the very jade-green globe that had once concealed the criminal sachet. Poirot's gloved hands traced the bamboo rim. "Mon ami," Hastings observed, "tonight we will dismantle these lanterns and send them on to the village schoolhouse. After that, Bedlington Villa will be at peace." Poirot nodded, eyes thoughtful. "Peace, yes, but peace must be tended, Hastings. Let us ensure every string and every silk is properly accounted for. In that way the lights will continue to shine, unencumbered by past shadows." Lady Bedlington joined them, placing a gentle hand on Hastings's shoulder. "I thank you both for your guidance, but there is one last matter I wish to put to rest, the fate of the dragon frame itself." Sir Lionel, entering with Mr. Thompson, offered a stout nod. "The dragon has served its purpose. I propose we retire it to the villa's west wing, perhaps as a permanent reminder of resilience. A glass case could display its bamboo ribs and a single illuminated lantern, so that visitors always remember both light and caution." Lady Bedlington's eyes brightened. "Yes, let the dragon rest here as both trophy and cautionary tale." Poirot tapped his cane. "An excellent memorial. And with that arranged, we shall carry each lantern box to the carriage and deliver them gently to the children's hands." By mid-morning, the footman stood ready with padded crates, the Ashdown lights carefully stowed within. Outside, the gravel shone beneath a watery sun, and swallows darted overhead. Each lantern box bore the names of the child who had crafted its companion within the garden. Thus, the link between the villa and the village would remain forever clear. Captain Hastings supervised the loading. Be sure the labels remain legible, and use no horses. These must travel by van for a smoother ride." Mr. Thompson, supervising the footman, nodded. "Of course, sir. We shall treat them as precious cargo." Lady Bedlington stepped forward to inspect the final parcels. She turned to Poirot. "Monsieur Poirot, will you accompany the lanterns to their destination, or remain to help Sir Lionel with the dragon display?" Poirot considered. "I shall remain, madam. If any knot still tugs at this mystery, it may reveal itself in the handling of that great frame. You, Captain Hastings, can deliver the lanterns safely." Hastings nodded. "Then I will depart at once." With a final farewell, Hastings climbed into the waiting van and set off down the drive, leaving the villa peaceful once more. Inside the West Wing gallery, where visitors would soon wander to view the dragon's remains, Sir Lionel and Poirot knelt before the great curved ribs of bamboo. Between them lay a single ashdown light, suspended upon a silver chain from a small mount in the glass case's centre. Sir Lionel dusted the metal plaque beneath the lantern. "I wish to inscribe a brief dedication. Here lies the dragon of shadows, tamed by light. Does that convey the proper sentiment, Hercule?" Poirot smiled faintly. "It captures both the peril and the triumph. A concise epitaph for a creature of fire and paper." Sir Lionel traced the words in pencil upon the glass. "Very well, and tomorrow the case will be sealed." He paused, looking at the empty lantern frames that once adorned the dragon's spine. "It is strange to see them gone." Poirot placed a consoling hand upon Sir Lionel's shoulder. "Absence only underlines presence, mon ami. The lanterns remain with the children, lighting their steps. Here, one lantern stands as sentinel, a reminder that vigilance must never sleep." Sir Lionel drew a slow breath. "Thank you, Poirot. You have helped me restore not only my inheritance, but also my faith in humanity." That afternoon Poirot returned to his sitting-room, where he found Lady Bedlington awaiting him. Tea was laid out, Earl Grey in delicate porcelain, shortbread biscuits striped with lemon zest, and small plates of crystallized ginger. The atmosphere was tranquil, as though spring itself had settled within the villa's walls. "Please," Lady Bedlington offered, "join me for a moment before you depart." Poirot took his seat, uncapping his journal and setting it beside his teacup. Lady Bedlington poured for him with graceful precision. "You have faced many shadows here," she began quietly. "Yet you have always guided me toward the light. I cannot thank you enough for saving both my home and my family." Poirot sipped his tea, his eyes reflecting compassion. "Madame, I only performed my duty. The true strength came from within, your courage to summon help, your mercy to forgive, and from Sir Simon Ashdown himself, whose final act illuminated every step." She pressed her hands together. "His memory will live on in the lanterns and in every heart he touched." Poirot set down his cup. "Then his legacy will endure. And now, madame, I must prepare for my journey. My train departs at 7. He slid the taper into his coat pocket. "Before I leave, may I offer one final thought?" She inclined her head. "Of course, in every case, the smallest clue may hold the greatest promise," Poirot said, softly. "A torn seam, a scrap of paper, the shape of a lantern's glow, each revealed a path from darkness into clarity." may you carry such attentiveness forward in your gardens, your home, and your heart. Lady Bedlington smiled through tears. I shall, Hercule, I promise. As evening deepened into dusk, Poirot and Hastings met once more at Chalkford Station. The Ashdown Lights van returned empty, its precious cargo delivered safely. Hastings shook Poirot's hand warmly. Safe journey, old friend, and thank you for another masterful unravelling. Poirot bent in a graceful bow. Until next time, Captain, may your lanterns, both paper and human, always shine brightly. He climbed aboard the train, settling into his seat as the whistle blew. Through the window, he caught one last glimpse of Bedlington Villa. The dragon case, the lantern strings, the golden oak terrace, each softly lit, each promise fulfilled. As the train snaked away into the starlit night, the villa receded from view, its lights flickering like distant memories. Yet within Poirot's mind the case glowed undimmed, a testament to the power of courage, the necessity of truth, and the beauty of lanterns that, once threatened by fire, now shone forever as beacons of hope. Chapter 9. The hidden flame the morning. Sun filtered through the tall rain-streaked windows of Bedlington Villa, its beams dancing across the polished parquet. Spring storms had passed, leaving the gardens awash in emerald green and fringe of snowdrops. Inside, the household moved with serene purpose. Sir Lionel oversaw final repairs to the orangery. Lady Bedlington prepared for the afternoon's saving. Sparks' fundraiser, and the footmen polished the Ashdown lights for their next display. Only Captain Hastings and Hercule Poirot maintained the quiet tension of men still mindful of hidden dangers. In the oak-panelled morning-room, Hastings poured coffee from a silver urn. "I thought we'd laid every ghost to rest," he said, setting cups before Poirot. "Yet you seemed unsettled as we arrived." Poirot stirred his sugar thoughtfully. "Hastings, no matter how many lanterns we light, there remains at least one dark corner unexamined. Simon Ashdown's final act exposed the codicil and the embezzlement, but his journal hinted at a third secret. A hidden flame, he wrote. We have not yet uncovered that." Hastings raised an eyebrow. Another secret? What could remain? The codicil, the forged ledgers, the poisoned sachet, all exposed. "Precisely," Poirot answered, his eyes distant. "The paper lanterns, concealed more than criminal devices. They were meant to convey messages by light. A hidden lantern path, perhaps. A procession of signals unseen by our eyes." Lady Bedlington entered, wrapping her shawl. "Captain Hercule, forgive the intrusion, but I have word from the schoolmaster." The children spoke of a secret stepping-stone near the Dragon's Pond, something Simon showed them one afternoon. They feared to mention it before, but they recall a metal ring set in stone beneath the water. Poirot's eyes brightened. Intriguing. A submerged ring, perhaps a hinge or cover for a cache. Simon caught a glimpse beneath, then perished before revealing its nature. "We must investigate at once." They hurried to the garden, where the artificial lake lay silver beneath the sky. The dragon's glass case stood sentinel at one end, and at its edge Hastings waded ankle-deep into the shallows. Lady Bedlington knelt on the marble bank. "Here," she said softly, brushing aside water plants. "A ring, just as the children said." Poirot knelt beside her, his finger tracing an iron ring set into a flat stone slab. Brushing away moss, he revealed a faint hinge. He tapped the ring gently with his cane's ferrule. The ring clattered in its socket. Hastings grasped it and lifted. The stone slab groaned, then shifted aside on silent, metal runners, revealing a shallow compartment beneath the water's surface. A stone-lined niche large enough to hold several objects. Inside lay a waterproof leather pouch, its seams swollen with moisture, and a small metal cylinder engraved with Chinese characters. Poirot retrieved the pouch and cylinder with gloved care, placing them on the bank. Lady Bedlington and Hastings drew back, awed by the discovery. "With this," Poirot murmured, "we reveal Simon's final hidden flame." He unbuckled the pouch and drew out a folded sheet of water-stained paper. Opening it, he read aloud, "For those who seek the lantern beyond its light. Within this cylinder lies the master key to every other ring concealed beneath lantern stones. Use it wisely to keep the villa safe from darkness once more." Poirot paused. A master key. Simon created a network of hidden caches beneath the lanterns. When threatened, one could secure documents or weapons in these niches, then recover them at need. The cylinder bears the chiselled key to many rings. Lady Bedlington gasped. But why hide so many caches? Was Simon prepared for attack on all sides? Simon's long service taught him that threats may come from any quarter, Poirot said, and he trusted few enough to need private stores. He eyed the cylinder. "Let us examine its mechanism." He held it to the light, spotting a tiny rotating sleeve. Hastings turned it. With a soft click, several internal pins shrugged aside. Poirot inserted the exposed shaft into the ring's socket. It turned smoothly, and the stone slab rose on its runners once more. He replaced it and refastened the hinge. "Marvellous," Hastings breathed. "One key to all lantern caches." Lady Bedlington pressed her hand to her chest. "But what of the caches themselves? Have we the time and knowledge to secure them?" Poirot rose, tucking the cylinder back into the pouch. "We shall enlist the children and the staff. Each hiding place lies beneath an ash-down light, so we can mark them discreetly with etched petals. Then, should danger return, one need only rustle the petals and lift the stone." Sir Lionel joined them at the bank. "My wife describes it well. Let us map these locations today and render them safe." All morning, the garden buzzed with activity. Footmen measured each lantern stump, gardeners cleared debris, and the orphanage children learned to carve faint floral designs into copper discs that would mark the stone covers. Hastings oversaw the operation, while Lady Bedlington comforted shy children and praised careful work. Poirot, cylinder in hand, guided Mr. Thompson to each ring. Near the rose arbour, by the yew hedge, under the magnolia, and at last before the orangery's threshold. At each point, the cylinder fit and the stone lifted to reveal a small niche. Into each they placed a token, a slender bone file, a keystone knife, and critical papers, copies of the codicil, ledgers, and a note explaining the system. Then they sealed the stone and affixed the copper petal marker. When the final cache was secured, the garden stood transformed. Lanterns glowed softly above, their stumps crowned with copper petals that caught the sun, while silent traps lay set beneath each. The villa's defences now extended through the earth, an invisible network, safeguarded by Simon's foresight and Poirot's ingenuity. Lady Bedlington clasped Poirot's hand. "You have given me peace at last, that even if darkness returns, Simon's hidden flame will guide me to safety." Poirot inclined his head. "Madame, your home now bears light both above and below, in lanterns and in hidden hearths. Schmur, no darkness ever prevail." Hastings beamed. "And should any more mysteries arise, you know where to find my marrow and the little grey cells." As they walked back to the villa, the Ashdown lights shimmered across the garden, their paper silks dancing in the breeze. Beneath each, the hidden cache waited, an ember of promise, ready to kindle hope whenever the night threatened again. In Bedlington Villa, fogs of treachery had lifted, only to reveal Simon Ashdown's final gift, the hidden flame that would forever guard the lantern's last glow. Chapter 10. The Final Illumination. The afternoon sun had softened to a mellow glow by the time the grand hall of Bedlington Villa filled with the soft murmur of guests arriving for the Saving Sparks fundraiser. Silk banners in jade and gold hung from the oak beams, each embossed with a single copper petal motif, echoing the hidden markers placed beneath the Ashdown lights. The air was alive with gentle excitement. Villagers, philanthropists, and the orphanage children gathered beneath crystal chandeliers that glinted like distant stars. This event would mark not only the culmination of Simon Ashdown's legacy, but also the unveiling of Bedlington Villa's new network of hidden safekeeping. Its lantern caches, now transformed from secret refuges into symbols of communal trust. Bedlington moved among the guests in a gown of soft ivory lace, her demeanour radiant. She paused beside the refreshment table. Pale green lemonade infused with mint, platters of delicate cucumber sandwiches, and petits fours shaped like paper, lanterns, and exchanged warm words with Reverend Vaughan, who had guided the children through the lantern embossing workshops. Captain Hastings offered her a cordial smile and took her arm, guiding her toward the dais at the hall's north end. Sir Lionel stood already at the dais, his countenance composed and proud. Behind him, a carved wooden screen bore the stylized image of the dragon frame, its ribs and one restored lantern, the single Ashdown light enshrined beneath glass. To either side, 6 copper petals marked lantern caches on a map of the villa's grounds, each etched with its location: Rose Arbour, Holly Path, Magnolia Nook, Orangery Threshold, Yew Bastion, and Dragon's Lair. Beneath the map, an ornate plaque read in gilded script, Bedlington Villa's Hidden Flame Network. In memory of Simon Ashdown, who illuminated our path. Poirot, impeccably dressed in morning coat and grey waistcoat, took his place beside Sir Lionel. Hastings and Lady Bedlington flanked them on the steps, while Lady Bathurst, Carlyle, Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Smythe, and Mrs. Bryant stood as honoured guests of the villa. Sir Lionel raised his hand for silence, and the crowd hushed at once. "Friends, neighbours, and cherished supporters," he began, voice resonant. "Today we gather in gratitude, not only for the light we share in these splendid halls, but for a light hidden beneath our feet, safeguarded by Simon Ashdown, and now entrusted to us all. This network of lantern caches, once a secret born of foreboding now stands as a testament to our collective vigilance and generosity. May it serve both as beacon and refuge for future generations." A gentle murmur of assent swept through the assembled company. Lady Bedlington stepped forward, her gown's ivory lace catching the afternoon glow. When Simon Ashdown sacrificed himself to expose deceit, he left more than a will and a series of travails. He bequeathed us a lesson, that true security springs not from walls and locks alone, but from the bonds of trust that unite us. Each of these caches lies beneath a lantern, whose gentle glow now guides the children of our orphanage and the villagers beyond. Tonight, as we raise our final lanterns, let us celebrate both light and loyalty. Reverend Vaughan approached with a small basket of paper lanterns, 12 in all, each one hand-painted by a child with scenes of hope. A single daffodil, a robin in flight, a rising sun. She placed the basket on the dais' edge. "Each lantern bears a verse," the Reverend said softly, "a promise of kindness or courage. Lady Bedlington will invite 3 of our youngest contributors to speak their lines before we release the lanterns into the evening sky." A bright-eyed little girl named Emily stepped forward, her pale green lantern adorned with a painted robin. She cleared her throat sweetly. "When shadows press and hearts grow cold, light a spark of truth untold. Ashdown's flame in paper spun guides us on until night's done." She lifted her lantern. A soft glow pulsed within. The crowd applauded, and Emily returned to the basket with a shy smile. Next came Thomas, who had painted swirling flames upon his lantern. He recited, through folded silk and bamboo frame, "Courage kindles hope's bright flame. Under Ashdown's gentle hand, we stand together, hand in hand." A ripple of approval followed, and Thomas placed his lantern gently beside Emily's. Finally, Isabella, in her mother's brooch and lantern adorned with daffodils, stepped forward. Her soft voice carried, "Beneath each light we forge a vow, to guard our friends and honour now. No darkness lingers if hearts unite. Ashdown's lantern beams our guiding light." Her lantern joined the others in a small circle of promise. Lady Bedlington encouraged the children to return to their families, and the guests formed a ring around the dais. Poirot raised his cane, tapping once for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, we now move to the release of our commemorative lanterns. Each will carry a verse and a hope skyward, symbolizing Simon Ashdown's final gift, that truth, once set aflame, shall never be extinguished. Let us count down together." He held aloft a silver bell. Lady Bedlington and Sir Lionel joined him. Hastings lifted the basket of 12 lanterns, distributing them to the guests, dignitaries, villagers, and staff alike. In each hand, the slender, bamboo frame trembled with anticipation. Poirot rang the bell once, clear and bright. 10, 9. Participants chimed in unison, holding their lanterns aloft. The great hall's glass doors and windows were flung open to the cool evening air. 3, 2, 1. Poirot's voice rose, and on his final note, the lantern's little flames leapt and were released together. 12 paper spheres drifted gently upward, bobbing like luminous fireflies against the dusk sky before ascending higher toward the first evening star. A hushed awe fell over the assembly as they watched the lanterns rise, carrying children's hopes and Ashdown's legacy aloft. At last, Hastings broke the silence. "Remarkable, Poirot," he whispered. "So many lights, so much promise." Poirot's eyes followed the lantern's ascent. "Yes, Hastings, they bear not only wax and paper, but every truth we uncovered and every kindness we chose. Their glow will linger in memory long after their flames have faded." Lady Bedlington clasped Sir Lionel's hand. "Thank you, Hercule. Because of you and Simon, we have transformed fear into faith." Sir Lionel nodded, tears shining, "and from every shadow we have kindled a new light." Inside the hall, the guests returned to the warmth, where a supper of soft cheeses, honeyed pastries, and jasmine tea awaited. Conversation turned to hopeful schemes. Expanded support for the orphanage, lantern-making workshops at the village school, and annual remembrances of Ashdown's Day. Lady Bedlington looked on with contentment. Her villa, once home to hidden perils, now pulsed with open celebration. Later, as the candles waned and the guests departed, Hastings and Poirot walked the lantern-lit corridors one last time. The copper petals gleamed atop the lantern hangers. The dragon's case stood silent, its single Ashdown light still aglow. Each cash marker, each lantern, each copper emblem spoke of promises kept and of vigilance forever renewed. Captain Hastings paused before a window overlooking the garden. "All done, Poirot. Every secret revealed, every danger averted." Poirot turned to him, his fine features serene. "Indeed, Hastings. But remember, light must be tended lest shadows return. Our hidden flame network remains. Beneath those lanterns lies the promise that truth will never sleep." With that, they parted company for the night, Hastings to his lodgings, and Poirot to the platform at Chalkford Station, where his travelling cloak awaited. As the train began its gentle roll, Poirot glanced back at the recurring glow of Bedlington Villa's windows and lantern strings. In that distant shimmer, he saw not only the villa's architecture, but the enduring light of a community's courage and compassion. In the darkness beyond the carriage window, the 12 lanterns still drifted skyward, tiny beacons against the infinite night, carrying with them the final illumination of Simon Ashdown's truth, and the promise that even in deepest shadows, a single flame may lead the way. Chapter 11. A year of lantern spring slipped into summer with a gentle grace at Bedlington Villa. The Ashdown lights, no longer the nightly spectacle they once were, but rather a familiar warmth in every corridor and garden path. 1 year had passed since the Saving Sparks fundraiser, and with it came anniversaries of both peril and promise. Lady Bedlington stood on her terrace one early June morning, the horizon flushed with dawn's first light, as Captain Hastings approached with 2 cups of tea. "Good morning, madam," Hastings said, handing her a china cup adorned with the copper petal motif. "The gardener's apprentices have begun planting the summer blooms beneath each lantern cash marker. The roses, lilies, and hollyhocks will frame them splendidly by Midsummer's Eve." Lady Bedlington inhaled the fragrant breeze, her gaze sweeping the emerald lawns and the stands of Ashdown lights above. "Thank you, Arthur. Simon Ashdown would have loved this. Lanterns suspended among summer roses, Hastings smiled. Indeed, and the orphanage children have requested a lantern day when they can return to Bedlington Villa, light their own creations, and plant heirloom seeds in the dragon's old wing. An excellent idea, Lady Bedlington agreed, her eyes bright. I shall send the invitations today. She paused, leaning on the stone balustrade. And I hope Monsieur Poirot will grace us once more. He left this morning for Paris, Hastings replied, settling onto a nearby bench, but he promised to return for next Lantern Day. I have no doubt he views Simon's network with some pride. Lady Bedlington nodded thoughtfully. His network remains our hidden flame, a safety net for future generations. I confess, I have not tested the caches since we sealed them last spring. Hastings raised an eyebrow. Perhaps a discreet inspection is in order, just to ensure everything remains in working order. Before she could reply, the library's double doors opened behind them, and Mr. Thompson emerged, holding a small silver tray with Lord Fairchild's file, recently restored to good standing after his manslaughter reprieve, and a letter from Lady Bathurst regarding the scholarship fund. "Your tea, madam, sir," the butler announced quietly, setting down the tray. "And Sir Lionel's note. He wills that the codicil under the dragon frame be relocated to your private safe, alongside the original will." Lady Bedlington thanked him and watched as he retreated. Hastings unfolded the letter from Lady Bathurst, his eyes smiling as he read her joyful report of the scholarship recipients now thriving at university. "Her words warm the heart," Hastings said. "She thanks you for your mercy and hopes to name a dormitory wing after Simon Ashdown." Lady Bedlington sipped her tea. "A fitting tribute. He gave us more than a network of lantern caches. He gave us lessons in courage and compassion. They finished their tea in companionable silence, the garden alive with the hum of early summer. At last, Lady Bedlington stood. "Let us test the caches," she declared. "Bring your key cylinder, Arthur." Hastings produced the master key cylinder from his coat pocket. They walked together down the gravel path to the rose arbour, where a single copper petal glinted above the lantern stump. Hastings inserted the key. The ring turned with a reassuring click, and the stone slab lifted to reveal the niche below. Inside lay the leather pouch containing the ledgers, the scholarship trust documents, and the knife Simon had provided for emergencies. Lady Bedlington knelt to inspect the contents. "Pristine," she exclaimed. "No water, no intrusion." She closed the niche and replaced the slab. "Thank you, Simon." Hastings followed her to the holly hedge marker, then to the magnolia nook, the orangery threshold, the yew bastion, and at last to the dragon frame's pedestal in the west wing. Each cache yielded its preserved treasure, proof that Simon's foresight endured. As the final slab clicked shut, Lady Bedlington turned to Hastings, eyes glistening. "Our hidden flame network remains unbroken. It gives me peace beyond measure." Hastings bowed. "It is Simon's greatest gift, and yours, Lady Bedlington, for preserving it." A week later, the annual Lantern Day dawned bright and clear. The children of the St. Margaret's Orphanage arrived by carriage, their faces alight with anticipation. Each carried a paper lantern freshly painted in dreams, gardens of butterflies, soaring ships, and constellations of stars. They wore white smocks splashed with colour, ribbons in their hair, and hope in their hearts. Lady Bedlington, Sir Lionel, Hastings, and the staff greeted them on the terrace. Nurse Thornton, the orphanage matron, brushed away a tear as she watched her ward's wonder at the lanterns. "Welcome back to Bedlington Villa," Lady Bedlington said, her voice gentle. "Today you are the Ashdown lantern bearers. You helped create this network. Now you shall lead our procession to light the garden's paths once more." Poirot appeared at that moment, cane in hand and moustaches perfectly groomed. Though his journey had taken him to Paris, he had returned for this special day. He greeted each child by name, his warm smile lighting their spirits. "Mes enfants," he said, patting Hastings's hand as he passed, "I trust the cylinder key remains safe." Hastings nodded. "All caches tested, safe and ready," Poirot gestured to the waiting procession. "Then let us walk, and with each lantern's glow, remember that truth and courage kindle light beyond the reach of any shadow." The group moved under the arch of rose and lanterns. Children called out their verses, new poems of perseverance, kindness, and renewal, while parents and guests applauded. Lanterns swung in time with their steps, petals painted in bright hues, just above each stump, marking the hidden caches below. At the dragon frame, the final tribute awaited. A new lantern, painted by the oldest orphan, bore the inscription, "For those who seek the flame in darkest night, Simon's legacy remains our guiding light." Poirot held the lantern aloft, while Hastings and young Emily, from last year's ceremony, spoke the final verse together. "Through dragon ribs and lantern glow, we carry hope wherever we go." As the words echoed, the gardener's apprentice Meredith knelt and placed a single primrose at the dragon's pedestal, companion to the rose and rest of the bulbs planted a year before. The procession returned to the terrace, where tables groaned under a feast of summer fare, chilled cucumber soup, wild berry tarts, and lavender lemonade. Laughter and conversation blossomed in the afternoon heat, the children's bright faces reflecting the deep joy of a community united. As the evening fell and the last carriage departed, Lady Bedlington paused once more beneath the lantern arch. Hastings and Poirot joined her, their figures shadowed against the lantern glow. "It seems our work remains never-ending," Hastings said with a grin, "but worth every moment." Lady Bedlington placed a gentle hand on Poirot's arm. "You reminded me that light must be tended, inside and out. I am forever grateful." Poirot inclined his head, eyes reflecting the lantern light. "Madam, the true measure of our efforts lies not in the grand gestures, but in the daily tending of trust. Your network of hidden flames stands as proof." With that, they walked together back to the villa, the lantern's glow fading into the hush of night, yet leaving behind a promise that whenever shadows returned, a network of lights, hidden and shared, would unwaveringly guide their way. Chapter 12. The Enduring Lantern. The summer dusk settled gently over Bedlington Villa, bathing the rose garden in a soft lavender glow. Lanterns, once paper and flickering, now electric replicas of the Ashdown lights, lined the winding paths, their copper petals catching the last rays of daylight. Lady Bedlington stood beneath the great yew arch, gazing across the garden with serene satisfaction. Beside her, Captain Hastings and Hercule Poirot shared in the quiet triumph of a mystery laid to rest. Hercule, Hastings whispered, his voice hushed in reverence for the evening. "It seems almost impossible to believe that just a year ago we were chasing threats through these very hedges." Poirot adjusted his lapel, his moustache curling in a thoughtful smile. "Time has a curious way of smoothing peril into hope, my friend. These lanterns once bore poisoned shadow. Now they glow with promise." Lady Bedlington turned to her companions. "I invited you both here tonight not simply to admire the garden, but to watch the final stage of our month-long Ashdown celebration, the lighting of the villa's permanent lantern network. Twice a day, at dawn and dusk, these lanterns will glow in Simon Ashdown's memory, guiding all who enter these grounds." She touched a lantern's base. "They will welcome guests hereafter, villagers, scholars, even travellers passing through, bearing the message that light banishes fear." Poirot nodded. A fitting legacy indeed. Inside the villa's grand drawing-room, the company gathered for an intimate supper before the ceremonial lighting. The long mahogany table was set with china that bore the copper petal motif. Plates, rimmed in jade, tumblers etched with lantern silhouettes. Above them, crystal chandeliers caught the glow of tall candles, mingling with the soft electric light below. Lady Bedlington presided at the head. To her left sat Sir Lionel, his gaze bright with pride. To her right, Lady Bathurst and Mr. Carlyle exchanged warm smiles, partners in scholarship and now in renewed friendship. Reverend Vaughan, Dr. Sinclair, Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Smythe, and Mrs. Bryant completed the circle, each a guardian of the villa's renewed spirit. Hastings rose with a cordial. "If I may," he began, his voice warm and clear, "let us honour the memory of Simon Ashdown and the courage of all who stood against darkness, to truth, to mercy, and to the enduring flame of hope." Glasses chimed, and Lady Bedlington allowed herself a moment to drink in the fellowship gathered around her. As plates were passed, roast pheasant, summer vegetables, herb-crusted fish, the conversation flowed from grateful reminiscence to plans for the future. Expansion of the orphanage scholarship, the lantern-making workshops at St. Margaret's, and repairs to the old chapel funded by Bedlington generosity. When dessert, lemon curds in pastry shells topped with candied lantern blossoms was served, Lady Bedlington rose once more. "My friends," she said softly, "Simon's courage taught us that even the smallest spark can dispel the deepest fear. Tonight we conclude our celebration not with an end, but with a beginning. The moment when Bedlington Villa's lantern network shall shine forever. A beacon for all who seek safety and truth." They adjourned through the east doors into the garden. At the centre of the rose lawn stood an octagonal pavilion, its ribboned columns entwined with climbing jasmine. From its ceiling hung the original Ashdown light, the very green lantern that had concealed the first poison sachet, now restored and wired to glow eternally. Beyond it, the lantern stumps rose like silent sentinels, each with its copper petal perched above. Lady Bedlington held a slender key-ring, the master cylinder, that Monsieur Poirot had used to reveal the hidden caches. "With this key," she said, "I declare these lanterns open to all who vow to protect truth and cherish mercy." She turned the cylinder in the green lantern's ring with a soft click. Poirot stood beside her, cane in hand. "Madame, your Stewardship has kindled a light that will endure long beyond any flicker of panic. May these lamps guide every weary traveller to rest." Sir Lionel raised his hand, "And may every citizen of God's creation see, in their radiance, that light is stronger than any shadow." At his nod, Reverend Vaughan stepped forward and offered a prayer of dedication. "O source of all light, we consecrate these lanterns and the candles within. Let them shine as symbols of hope and guardians of justice. May their glow remind us always that truth and compassion are twin flames that banish the night. Amen." A hush fell. Then, with mounting anticipation, Lady Bedlington lifted a small lever at the lantern's base. The Ashdown light glowed from deep green to brilliant emerald, and one by one, each subsidiary lantern along the paths ignited in soft waves of warm light. The effect was magical. The roses and lavender beds shimmered as if dusted by stardust. The yew hedges stood out in silhouette. The dragon's case near the west wing glowed like a silent guardian. Children at St. Margaret's, observing from a distance with local villagers, clapped in delight. Hastings turned to Poirot, voice low. "This is the truest ending I have ever witnessed." Poirot allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. "Yes, Hastings, the case of the paper lanterns began in darkness and peril, but it concludes in perpetual light. And in that we find our greatest victory." As the guests dispersed beneath the lantern glow, some lingering to wander the illuminated paths, others retreating to warm hearths, Lady Bedlington, Hastings, and Poirot remained in the pavilion for a final word. Lady Bedlington placed a lantern-shaped locket in each of their hands, a tiny copper petal on a silver chain. "A token of gratitude," she said. "May these remind you that wherever you go, kindness and truth shine brighter than any flame." Hastings clasped the locket, his eyes glistening. "I shall wear this always." Poirot draped his chain beneath his waistcoat, offering his cane in a bow. "Madame, you've granted me the most exquisite case. One not of murder or espionage, but of communal redemption." She smiled through gratitude. "I owe it all to Simon Ashdown, and to you, Hercule, and you, Arthur. You taught us how to read light within darkness." With a final embrace, they parted, Hastings to his carriage, Poirot to the station, and Lady Bedlington to the warmth of her villa. As they departed, the lantern's glow followed them, a steady river of light through the darkness. That night, in his first-class compartment aboard the Thames Express, Poirot sat gazing out at the moonlit countryside, the copper-petal locket resting beneath his breast-pocket. He tapped his cane thoughtfully. "The true mystery," he murmured to himself, "is how the human heart, once illuminated by kindness, shines like a lantern upon all it touches." Beyond the window, stars glimmered, and in the distance faint echoes of the Bedlington lights lingered, tiny beacons of hope in an endless night. And somewhere, deep in the villa's gardens, the master key cylinder lay secure, awaiting Simon, Ashdown's next hidden flame, and the assurance that truth, once tended, never dies. Chapter 13. Whispers in the Night. The tranquil hush of late summer descended upon Bedlington Villa as lantern-lit terraces and blooming rose bushes gave way to the velvet cloak of night. A soft breeze stirred the lantern's silken casings, sending ripples of muted light along the gravel paths. Beneath the greatest Ashdown light, Lady Bedlington stood gazing outward, wrapped in a shawl of pale jade, her mind alight with both pride and a flicker of unease. Though the villa had known no threat since the last lantern day, Poirot's warning that light must ever be tended echoed in her thoughts. Behind her, the door to the conservatory opened, and Captain Hastings joined her, his dark hair ruffled by the breeze. "Lady Bedlington," he said quietly, "I hope you will forgive my intrusion, but I thought you might welcome company." She turned with a gentle smile. "Thank you, Arthur. Please stay with me a moment." She gestured to the softly glowing lanterns above. "I find the night more soothing now than fearful, yet I cannot help recalling how swiftly shadow once sought these paths." Hastings nodded, his expression thoughtful. "True, but every glow here reminds us how courage and truth banished the darkness." He paused. "Have you heard from Monsieur Poirot since he returned to Paris?" Lady Bedlington shook her head. "Only a brief note. He congratulated us on the enduring network and promised to visit again next spring. His little grey cells, he said, already stir at some new puzzle far from home." She sighed happily. "I wish I shared his gift for detecting hidden truths." At that moment a soft rustling came from the rose arbour nearby. Lady Bedlington and Hastings exchanged a glance. The garden lay deserted save for them, yet at the far end a shadow flitted between the holly and the lavender. In that instant both understood. An intruder moved among the lanterns. Hastings set his jaw. "Stay here, madame. I will investigate." "No," Lady Bedlington replied firmly, laying a hand on his arm. "We face danger together, just as Simon Ashdown taught us." She steeled herself and followed Hastings toward the arbour. The moon, now gilding the garden with silver, revealed the figure. A slight woman draped in dark riding cloak, her hood drawn low. She knelt beside a lantern stump, leaning close as though to listen for the hidden cache beneath. Hastings and Lady Bedlington approached silently, footfalls muted by the gravel. Poirot's words guided Hastings's mind. Convection of whispering winds could carry hidden warnings. He prepared to confront the figure, but Lady Bedlington raised a finger to her lips. Together they skirted the arbour's edge until they stood within arm's reach. "Madame," Hastings called softly, "may we ask your purpose here?" The figure startled, rising with a quick movement that sent a cluster of blue lanterns swinging. She turned, revealing the sharp features of Miss Eleanor Fairchurch, Sir Lionel Bedlington's distant cousin, an elegant woman whose eyes now shone with panic and resolve. "Captain Hastings, Lady Bedlington," she said, voice taut. I meant no harm." She brushed a strand of dark hair from her face. "I only sought to honour Simon's legacy by adding my thanks to the lantern network." Lady Bedlington frowned. "By digging near the caches. You must know these niches were secret, meant only for emergencies." Eleanor's lips trembled. I read of the network and brought a small token for Simon Ashdown, to be placed in the final cache under the dragon's lair. I believed that if I honoured him here, it would ease my conscience." She drew from beneath her cloak a small wooden box, intricately carved with lantern motifs. Hastings stepped forward. "Miss Fairchurch, these caches are not memorials. They hold vital papers and instruments of safety. removing stones without the master key endangers us all. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I did not know. I only meant to show my gratitude. I had nowhere else to place a token. Lady Bedlington exchanged a glance with Hastings. Very well. You shall not be punished, but you must return the box to me, and you must never again tamper with our network. Eleanor bowed, her head relinquishing the wooden box. Hastings brushed away gravel from the stump and replaced it, sealing the niche. Eleanor watched. Shame and relief mingled in her face. As they returned toward the rose garden, Lady Bedlington held the small box. She opened it to find inside a single paper lantern charm, carved in ivory, its surface engraved with the words, "O light be my guide." Eleanor whispered, "He was my hero too. I only wished to show it." Lady Bedlington closed the box gently. "Your intention was kind, but the network belongs to all who tend it with care. Tomorrow we shall welcome you to our lantern day, but you must follow the rules." Miss Fairchurch nodded. "Thank you." She curtsied deeply, then slipped away through the shadows. Later that night, Lady Bedlington returned to the lantern-lit terrace alone, the ivory charm in hand. Hastings joined her, offering her a cup of chamomile tea. "It seems our network will always draw those who cherish its light," he said. She nodded, tracing the lantern carving with her fingertip. "And always require our vigilance." She smiled faintly. "Yet perhaps this token belongs more properly to the orphanage children. They would treasure it in their workshop." Hastings agreed. A thoughtful idea. Miss Fairchurch's gratitude transformed into a gift for those who truly need hope. Lady Bedlington pressed the charm to her heart. "Yes, tomorrow I shall carry it to the children and tell them of another who honours Simon's flame." They stood beneath the softly glowing lanterns in companionable silence, the night's hush broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. In Bedlington Villa's garden, light had once skated on the edge of shadow, but now, time and again, kind intentions and steady resolve proved stronger than any hidden peril. Poirot's next correspondence might speak of distant intrigues, but here, beneath the echoing glow of the Ashdown lights, a new chapter of trust and remembrance unfolded. Its whispers carried on the night breeze, a promise that every lantern, every heart, would forever keep the hidden flame alight. Chapter 14. The Legacy of Light. The next morning, the sun rose pale and golden over Bedlington Villa, its rays filtering gently through the newly unfurled leaves of early autumn. Lady Bedlington stood on the terrace overlooking the rose garden, breathing the crisp air with thoughtful serenity. Below her, the Ashdown lights shimmered faintly even in daylight, their electric glow so subtle that one might think them mere decorative accents. Yet she understood, as did all who lived and laboured here, that each lantern marked a promise, a hidden flame that would safeguard the villa and its inhabitants through any darkness. Within the conservatory, Captain Hastings and Hercule Poirot convened among the palms and orchids. Hastings poured 2 cups of fragrant Darjeeling tea, steam curling upward like soft white tendrils in the morning light. Poirot accepted a cup with his customary precision, straightening his waistcoat before settling at a wicker table. "Hastings," he said, lifting the cup to his lips, "we approach the anniversary of Simon Ashdown's final sacrifice. Our network of hidden caches has stood untested for many months. Yet in truth, the greatest test is not in our readiness for peril, but in our commitment to remember why these lanterns were lit in the first place. Hastings nodded, setting his cup down. Indeed, monsieur. I propose that today we invite the villagers back, that they may revisit the garden paths and reflect upon Simon's legacy. A small gathering, perhaps, with readings of verses and a review of the original lantern map. Poirot smiled softly. A splendid idea, and Lady Bedlington, I trust, has planned such an event. As if summoned by his words, Lady Bedlington entered the conservatory, her pale shawl catching the sunrise's glow. "Good morning, friends," she said warmly. "I have arranged for a modest ceremony at 3 o'clock. Reverend Vaughan will lead, and a handful of villagers, especially those whose lives were touched by Simon's kindness, will speak. Then we shall walk the garden one last time under his lights, ensuring each marker still stands firm." Hastings rose. "Then let us commence preparations. I will see to the chairs and refreshments." Poirot inclined his head. "And I shall revisit the lantern cache beneath the dragon's lair to confirm that every key still fits." Lady Bedlington followed Poirot out of the conservatory, the trio moving through the villa's sunlit corridors toward the west wing, where the dragon frame stood enshrined in glass. The path passed beneath archways of jasmine and clematis, and the air was heavy with the scent of late blossoms. At the dragon's case, Poirot drew the master cylinder from his pocket. Hastings and Lady Bedlington watched as he knelt before the lantern's mounting bracket and inserted the key. A soft click echoed in the quiet chamber, and with practised care he lifted the glass door of the case. There, the single emerald lantern, Simon's first Ashdown light, glowed as though it still drew its strength from that night long ago. Poirot examined the leather pouch and the cylinder itself, noting no signs of corrosion or misuse. "Everything remains in perfect order," he announced. "Simon's concealing chamber is secure, and the network below the garden awaits only our need." Lady Bedlington placed a hand on Poirot's shoulder. "Thank you, Hercule. Your vigilance honours his foresight." Hastings clapped his hands. "Now, let us return to the garden. We must coordinate the villagers' arrival and ensure that the lantern map is at the dais." They passed back through the sunlit paths to find Mr. Thompson arranging folding chairs beneath the rose arbour, and Mrs. Smythe laying out a buffet of lemon cakes, cucumber sandwiches, and iced elderflower cordial. The villagers, 5 in all, arrived punctually. The baker, who once sheltered an orphan under his shop's awning. The blacksmith, whose daughter's life was saved in the flood. The schoolmistress, who preserved Simon's journals. A retired innkeeper, who remembered the first lantern display, and the parish clerk, who served as the initial registrar for the scholarship. At precisely 3 o'clock, Lady Bedlington stepped to the front of the dais, her pale gown rustling like a breeze. Hastings and Poirot took their places beside her. The villagers settled in the chairs, and Reverend Clara Vaughan emerged from the conservatory, her hymnal in hand. Reverend Vaughan opened with a soft invocation. "We gather in gratitude for Simon Ashdown's courage, and for the light he kindled that guides us still. May these words honour his memory and kindle our own spirits." One by one, the villagers rose to speak. The baker recalled the orphan's shy eyes as she clutched her first lantern. The blacksmith described how Simon's scholarship saved his daughter from an uncertain fate. The schoolmistress read passages from Ashdown's journal that spoke of hope amid despair. The innkeeper recounted the first lantern procession, its paper flames dancing like stars, and the parish clerk presented the tally of scholarship applications, now numbering 20 strong. At each speaker's close, Lady Bedlington offered a gentle word of thanks, and Hastings assisted with water or tissues where needed. Poirot, ever discreet, listened with a serene smile, absorbing every nuance. When the final applause died, Lady Bedlington addressed the gathering. "Oh, thank you, each of you, for sharing your recollections. Tonight, as at every dawn and dusk, these lights will glow beneath our watch. But the enduring light is not solely the lantern's glow. It is the flame within each of us, stoked by gratitude, compassion, and truth." She stepped aside, and Hastings lifted the basket of paper lanterns painted by the villagers' children. Each bore a verse or drawing commemorating Simon's legacy. As the paper lanterns were lit from battery-powered glows, a hush fell. Poirot tapped his cane lightly, calling for silence. "Mes amis, we now recall Simon's final words. Let the hidden flame be the guardian of every heart. Let us all release our lanterns together." On his count, they lifted and released. 12 paper spheres drifted upward, floating along, the path beneath the emerald glow of the original lantern. The electric lanterns above cast beams that cradled the paper lights as they ascended. Throughout the garden, hearts stirred with awe. The baker's orphan wept quietly. The blacksmith's daughter clasped her mother's hand. The schoolmistress inhaled deeply, and the parish clerk watched her own lantern bob gently skyward. As the paper lanterns disappeared into the night, Hastings turned to Poirot. "Remarkable, mon ami. The hidden flame endures, yet the visible light must soon be stowed for the season." Poirot's eyes glimmered. "Yes, Hastings. The paper lanterns fade, but the electric lights remain, and the hidden caches lie waiting. Ashdown's legacy is not one of impermanence, but of steadfast readiness." Lady Bedlington gathered the villagers for a final word of thanks, and they dispersed slowly, warm smiles on their faces. Mrs. Smythe and Mrs. Bryant gathered the empty lantern frames, stowing them for next year's ceremony. In the hush that followed, Lady Bedlington, Hastings, and Poirot remained beneath the rose arbour, the electric lanterns glowing softly above. The air smelled of roses and distant rain, and the promise of autumn deepened in the cooling night. Lady Bedlington placed a hand on Poirot's arm. "Thank you, Hercule, for guiding us through every twist, and for ensuring that our hidden flame will never be lost." Poirot inclined his head, his keen eyes meeting hers. "Madame, the greatest mysteries are those of human hearts, and this, perhaps, was the noblest puzzle of all, how to transform fear into faith, peril into promise, and paper lanterns into beacons of unity." Hastings nodded, glancing toward the dragon's glass case at the garden's edge. "And now, I think our final illumination is complete." Under the enduring lanterns, they walked back toward the villa, their silhouettes soft against the night's gentle glow. In that moment, Bedlington Villa stood as a living testament to courage rewarded, compassion extended, and the knowledge that the truest light, once lit, burns forever in every heart it touches. Chapter 15. The Lantern's New Dawn. The first frost of late autumn had kissed the gardens of Bedlington Villa with silvery lace, yet the Ashdown lights still glowed each dawn and dusk, their copper petals glinting beneath a chill sky. Lady Winifred Bedlington stood on the terrace at sunrise, wrapped in a charcoal-grey cloak, and watched as mist drifted through the yews. At her side, Captain Hastings adjusted his scarf, while Hercule Poirot, handsome in hand, surveyed the lanterns with a satisfied gleam in his eye. "My lady," Hastings said, his breath puffing in the crisp air, "our network has stood steadfast through spring's promise and summer's warmth. I suspect you'll wish to mark this quarter with another gathering." Lady Bedlington smiled, tucking her gloved hand into Hastings's arm. "Indeed, Arthur. As the days shorten, I thought we might invite the village for a Lantern's New Dawn ceremony, honouring our hidden flame and preparing the network for winter's hush." Poirot inclined his head. "An excellent plan. Renewal is the heart of every lantern's promise, and this evening's crispness will lend each glow the clarity of fresh purpose." They moved together along the gravel path, where copper petals glowed like embers at their feet. Poirot paused before the rose arbour's stump. "All caches remain secure?" he asked Hastings. "Tested again this morning," Hastings replied. "No mischief beneath the stones." Satisfied, Poirot led them into the conservatory, where Lady Bedlington had summoned Mrs. Smythe and Mrs. Bryant to plan the evening. The head housemaid and the seamstress sat at a mahogany table strewn with maps, candle sketches, and invitations. "Good morning, ladies," Lady Bedlington greeted. "We shall gather at 4 o'clock, when the lantern's glow is most profound against the autumn dusk. Mrs. Smythe, please secure the village brass band. Mrs. Bryant, prepare hand-painted lantern kits for the children of St. Margaret's." Mrs. Smythe curtsied. "At once, madame, and I have arranged fire watchers from the local brigade, just as Simon Ashdown would have insisted." Mrs. Bryant smiled. "Lantern kits will include the copper petal emblem and a verse for each child to compose." Lady Bedlington pressed her, hands together. "Perfect. Poirot, Hastings, any final suggestions?" Poirot tapped his cane thoughtfully. "Ensure that the lantern's casings are weatherproof. Winds threaten autumn gatherings, and we would not have Simon's hidden flame," Dow said. Hastings grinned. "I'll see to fresh sealant and storm guards." With plans set, the party dispersed to ready the villa. Sir Lionel joined them as they departed, offering his own hearty resolve. "Let Bedlington Villa shine on through winters." Door. By late afternoon, villagers arrived, some on foot, some by carriage, carrying quilts and lanterns. Under the rose arbour, tables groaned with spiced cider, honey cakes, and platters of roasted chestnuts. Children in knitted caps clustered around Mrs. Bryant's station, painting copper petals and inscribing verses of courage. Lady Bathurst and Mr. Carlyle greeted each family, while Reverend Vaughan offered blessings. Dr. Sinclair tended to a younger child's scrape with gentle hands. The air swelled with conversation, laughter, and the crackle of fire pits lighting in preparation. As the sun dipped low, Lady Bedlington stepped to the rose arbour's dais, flanked by Hastings and Poirot. The low lanterns glowed in orange halos, and the first notes of the brass band rose in a stirring fanfare. Lady Bedlington raised her hands for quiet. Friends, neighbours, children of St. Margaret's, welcome to our lantern's new dawn. Today we honour Simon Ashdown's legacy, his courage that lit our path, his foresight that protected our home, and his reminder that a hidden flame once shared can warm the coldest winter. A hush fell as Reverend Vaughan stepped forward. "Let us pray." With head bowed he offered, "O light eternal, bless these lanterns and the hearts that bear them. May our hidden flame shine brightly, guiding us through shadowed times. Amen." His final word, Lady Bedlington turned to the children. "Now, let us light our lanterns together." In a graceful ceremony, each child's lantern was kindled by a fire-watcher's taper, its flame steady against the dusk's chill. The villagers formed a circle beneath the glowing arbour, the brass band playing a gentle hymn as the lanterns rose on poles. Verses were spoken, promises of kindness, courage, and memory. One by one, villagers recited their lines. Marjorie the baker, her lantern painted with golden wheat. May every loaf we share express the warmth of Ashdown's steadfastness. Edward, the blacksmith, holding a lantern etched with forging hammers. Through sparks and steel his truth we bind, a glowing forge within the mind. Sarah the schoolmistress, with chalk-white verse upon her lantern. In every lesson, let us teach a hidden flame that lives in each. As each verse concluded, the lantern's glow deepened, building toward a unified brilliance that outshone the fading sky. Poirot watched from Lady Bedlington's side, his keen eyes reflecting the lights. "Beautiful," Hastings whispered. "Each glow a tribute to one man's gift." Poirot nodded, "And to every heart that tends the hidden flame within." When the hymn ended, Lady Bedlington led the procession through the garden paths, lanterns swaying in rhythmic echo of footfalls. They passed the rose arbour, lingered at the magnolia nook, paused by the orangery threshold, and approached the final marker by the dragon's glass case. Here Hastings lifted the restored emerald lantern, Simon's original Ashdown light, and Poirot inserted the master key cylinder. The glass door opened with a soft click, revealing the niche beneath. Mrs. Smythe knelt to place a fresh pouch of emergency provisions and a folded scroll containing today's verses alongside Simon's initial gifts. Closing the door, Hastings replaced the lantern, and the case glowed anew. Lady Bedlington placed a primrose at its base and turned to face the gathered. "This marks our new dawn," she proclaimed. "Let each of these lanterns, hidden and visible, stand as testament that from one light we build 1,000. When winter's frost descends, remember today's glow. When shadows rise, recall Simon's courage, and know that the hidden flame endures." Cheers rose under the lantern's gleam, and the crowd lingered, savouring warmth against the autumn chill. Later, in the candle-lit warmth of the drawing-room, guests enjoyed honeyed pastries and blackberry cordial beside a roaring fire. Lady Bedlington moved quietly among them, offering thanks and smiles. Hastings and Poirot found seats before the hearth, their chairs steaming from the day's exertions. Hastings leaned forward. "Another celebration complete, Poirot. Yet this one feels different, more permanent somehow." Poirot stirred his tea. Because we have woven light into tradition, Hastings. The hidden flame is no longer a secret, but a covenant. Each generation shall reveal it anew. Lady Bedlington joined them, her shawl draped over a chair-back. Thank you both for guiding us from peril to promise, and for helping me channel Simon's courage into our community. Poirot rose, touching his cane. Madame, it has been my privilege, and now, should any shadow fall upon this villa, remember that countless hearts stand vigilant beneath these lanterns. He bowed crisply and departed for the station, lantern locket at his breast. Hastings and Lady Bedlington watched his carriage recede down the drive, its lamps kindled like distant stars. As the night deepened, Hastings rose to close the drapes, while Lady Bedlington lingered by the fire, gazing at the copper petal that hung above their hearth, a relic of Simon's first hidden flame. She whispered into the glow, "May your light never fade, Ashdown, and may every lantern hereafter guide us home." And in the hush of Bedlington Villa, the Ashdown lights pulsed softly, an unbroken legacy of courage, compassion, and the promise of a new dawn, season after season, hidden flame after hidden flame. Chapter 16. The last signal winter settled over Bedlington Villa, with a hush of frost and pale sunlight glinting through the mist. Under the skeletal branches of ancient yew and oak, the Ashdown lights glowed like embers in twilight, their copper petals shining against the silvered landscape. Lady Bedlington stood at the edge of the rose garden in a woolen cloak, her breath visible in the crisp air. Beside her, Captain Hastings buttoned his greatcoat while surveying the frost-laced lawn, and Hercule Poirot, leaning on his cane, closed his eyes in thoughtful reverie. "My lady," Hastings said softly, "we have reached the final test of Simon Ashdown's legacy. Tonight we shall confirm that our hidden lantern network remains both secret and secure, even under winter's cloak." Lady Bedlington nodded, her warm breath steady despite the cold. "Yes, Captain. I have summoned only you and Monsieur Poirot to witness this last signal. No villagers, no children, just our truest sentinels." Poirot opened his eyes, their dark depths reflecting the lantern glow. "En vérité, the greatest proof of a network's strength is its quiet endurance. If Simon's hidden flame still warms these caches now, then his foresight is vindicated." They Doudry stepped together down the frost-crisped path, lantern locket at Lady Bedlington's breast, Hastings's hand on the hilt of his fur-lined gloves. The first cachet lay beneath the rose arbour, its copper petal gleaming. Hastings knelt and produced Poirot's master cylinder, its brass surface cool to the touch. With a soft click, the ring turned, and the stone slab slid aside on its metal runners. Beneath lay the leather pouch, still intact, containing emergency supplies, flour-dusted biscuits, a change of winter gloves, a tiny vial of brandy, and a bare folded note bearing Simon's final admonition. Should winter's shadow fall, then seek the hidden light within. Hastings replaced the pouch, sealing the stone. Lady Bedlington pressed a gentle hand against his arm. "All as he left it," she whispered. They moved on to the holly path, where cinnamon-laced leaves crunched beneath their boots. At the second cache, they discovered the same unspoiled contents, the brandy undisturbed, the note still legible. Poirot tapped the pouch approvingly. Simon anticipated every eventuality, down to the damp of winter's breath. Next came the magnolia nook. The third cache, too, lay undisturbed, its flour-dusted biscuits still crisp, the gloves a crisp reminder of careful preparation. Hastings smiled as he replaced the stone. His trust in us was complete. He believed we would not neglect these gifts. The wind stirred the lantern's silken casings as the trio advanced to the orangery threshold, where the fourth cache awaited. Here they found a single difference. The pouch's ribbon had loosened, a sign that some passing creature, perhaps a fox, had brushed against it. Yet the pouch remained in place, untouched by inquisitive paws. Lady Bedlington straightened the ribbon and refastened the slab. Even prowling wildlife respects his boundaries. They continued to the yew bastion, and finally to the dragon's lair, now housing the glass-enclosed frame of bamboo ribs and the single emerald lantern. Hastings deployed a portable lamp so that Poirot might inspect the small chamber's hinge. With practised care, Poirot guided the cylinder into the ring. The glass door eased open, revealing the final niche. Within lay Simon's preserved codicil and the forged ledgers he had replaced, each document sealed in oilskin and bound with string. Hastings gingerly lifted the sheaf and handed it to Lady Bedlington. "His last act of truth," Lord Bedlington murmured, "preserved for all time." She traced the signature on the codicil, her gloved fingertip gentle. "We shall return these to the manuscript's chamber and mark them for posterity." As the final slab slid into place, the three stood, together beneath the arch of lanterns. The orchard's stillness pressed upon them, yet within the hush lay a warmth born of triumph. Hastings looked at Poirot. "Mon ami, the hidden flame endures even under winter's harshest breath. We have fulfilled our duty." Poirot inclined his head. "And in doing so, we honour Simon's memory, proving that a single spark of foresight can warm generations yet to come." Lady Bedlington turned to the lanterns, their glow soft against the frost. "But one final signal remains," she said. "I shall light a solitary lantern, Simon's first Ashdown light, at midnight, as the last messenger of his legacy." That evening, the villa's grand hall filled with only the household staff. Sir Lionel, resplendent in his riding coat, Mr. Thompson and Mrs. Smythe in their livery, Mrs. Bryant and Maurice Tilney, the steward, and Meredith Phillips, now a young man of steady resolve. They assembled beneath the rose arbour, each clutching a small taper. No villagers joined them. This was a family affair, honouring the man who had made their lives safer. Lady Bedlington entered from the conservatory, holding the green lantern that Simon had first hung in the dragon's frame. Its glass glowed faintly in the lantern rack. Hastings carried a matchbox, and Poirot held the master cylinder. The staff fell silent as Lady Bedlington lifted the lantern. "Friends," she began, voice steady despite the candle's flicker, "tonight we mark the final illumination of Simon Ashdown's hidden flame. Before the year's end, this lantern shall hang beneath the arbour, its glow impervious to ice and shadow. But this eve, let it stand as our solitary beacon, an emblem of his courage and our gratitude." She turned to Poirot. "Monsieur, will you install it?" Poirot stepped forward, the master cylinder held aloft. With a soft click he unlocked the bracket, and Lady Bedlington placed the lantern upon its hook. Hastings struck the match and offered the flame to the lantern's wick. The glass pulsed from deep green to brilliant emerald, bathing the arbour in smouldering light. A hush fell, broken only by the hearth's crackle from within the conservatory. Lady Bedlington held the lantern aloft. May this final signal guide us through every winter, every trial, until spring's warmth returns. Sir Lionel stepped forward, hand trembling as he grasped the lantern's base. "To Simon Ashdown," he said softly, "whose hidden flame still lights our path." Glasses of cognac and hot-spiced cider were pressed into grateful hands, and the staff raised a gentle toast in unison. The lantern's glow flickered and steadied, a solitary flame beneath the rose arbour. Its quiet brilliance a testament to human kindness and foresight. After the toast, Lady Bedlington led the staff back to the hall, where she invited each to share a memory of Simon. One by one, they recounted tales. Mrs. Smythe's anecdote of his kindness in providing firewood during the frost. Maurice's recollection of Simon's patient tutoring in the scriptures. Mrs. Bryant's story of his protection of rare orchids in the greenhouse. Meredith's remembrance of Simon's gift of a music box on his first day at the orphanage. Laughter and tears mingled as memories rekindled the warmth of his presence. Poirot listened with misted eyes, offering quiet nods. Hastings pressed his hand to the master cylinder in his pocket, a final reassurance that the hidden flame remained safe. When the last story ended, Lady Bedlington closed her eyes. "Tonight we honour you, Simon, your courage, your kindness, and your secret flame that guides us still." Poirot stood and tapped his cane gently. "And now, my friends, let us leave this hidden flame to burn undisturbed until the time it is needed most." They departed the hall in soft procession, leaving the staff to retire. As the door closed behind them, the green lantern glimmered beneath the arbour, its single light unwavering in the night. Later, Captain Hastings accompanied Poirot to Chalkford Station, where the detective's carriage awaited. The platform lamps glowed like distant stars, and steam from the locomotive curled in the winter air. Hastings clasped Poirot's hand warmly. "Farewell, mon ami," he said. "May your travels be free of peril, and may Simon's secret flame continue to guide us." Poirot inclined his head, pulling his lantern locket from beneath his coat. He attached it to the carriage's upholstery with delicate precision. "Until the next mystery, Hastings, may the hidden flame shine ever within your heart." With that, the train's whistle sounded, and Poirot stepped aboard. As the carriage eased away, Hastings watched the lantern-lit villa recede into the night, its single Ashdown light pulsing like a heartbeat beneath the stars. In that glow lay the promise that, however deep the darkness, a hidden flame, once kindled by courage and compassion, will endure, guiding all who seek its steady warmth into the new dawn. Chapter 17. The Test of Thunder. A sudden roar of thunder shook Bedlington Villa's stucco facade in the early hours of a temperamental spring morning, as if the sky itself challenged the villa's long-harboured serenity. Rain pounded the Ashdown lights, turning the rose garden paths into winding streams. Lady Bedlington awoke at the first crash, her heart fluttering with memories of past perils. By lantern glow, she donned her cloak and hurried to Hastings's. Room's determination in every step. "Arthur!" she called upon her arrival. Captain Hastings sat upright in bed, lighting a lantern. "Monsieur Poirot has warned us that every hidden flame must endure its trial. Tonight, that test arrives. Our network will be needed." Hastings swung his feet into boots. "I feared as much. The storm's deluge will flood the garden paths. We must secure the caches and ensure the orphanage children are safe." Lady Bedlington pressed her hand to the windows shuttered. "Pains. The river through St. Margaret's runs high already. If the burst crest reaches their quarters beneath the manor's east wing, their exits may be cut off." She darted down the corridor, Hastings at her heels, summoning Mr. Thompson at the servant's desk. Moments later, lanterns in hand, the four, Lady Bedlington, Hastings, Mr. Thompson, and Mrs. Smythe, walked into the tempest. Through gusting wind, they made for the first cache beneath the rose arbour. By thunderlight, Hastings inserted the master cylinder. The ring turned. The stone slab slid aside, revealing the leather pouch inside. Mr. Thompson withdrew its waterproof contents. A coil of stout rope, emergency blankets, and a hand-crank lantern rated for water ingress. "Perfect!" Hastings shouted over the rain. "We'll need that lantern at the orphanage. Let's move swiftly." They relocked the niche and raced toward the holly path. Torrents threatened to sweep them off their feet, yet beneath each petal marker they recovered identical supplies. Extra rope, blankets, flares. With each discovery, Lady Bedlington's confidence grew. Simon's foresight would save lives tonight. At the orphanage cottage, water seeped under the doors and rushed across the hall. The children huddled in the main room as Reverend Vaughan and Nurse Thornton implored them to stay calm. Lightning flickered through frosted windows. Suddenly, the main doorway buckled under pressure, and water gushed in. A terrified cry rose as the youngest child, a boy named Philip, slipped toward the flooded threshold. Nurse Thornton lunged in vain to grasp him. Outside, Lady Bedlington and Hastings burst through the kitchen door with the hand-crank lantern. Its steady beam cut through the gloom. Hastings tossed the coil of rope to Reverend Vaughan, who caught it with shaking hands. "Secure him," Hastings ordered. Nurse Thornton braced herself and looped the rope around Philip's waist. As the water spilled into their midst, Hastings, Lady Bedlington, and Reverend Vaughan formed a human chain. Lady Bedlington held Hastings's hand. Hastings gripped the rope, and Reverend Vaughan clung to Nurse Thornton and Philip. With each step against the current, they edged toward safety. At last, they reached the arched vestibule, where a dry landing offered respite from the flood. Nurse Thornton cradled Philip, tears and relief mingling on her face. "Thank you, Lady Bedlington. Thank you all," she sobbed. Lady Bedlington crossed the room, setting down the lantern. "Thanks go to Simon Ashdown, whose hidden flame guided our hands tonight. By dawn's pale light, the storm abated, and the grounds lay sodden, but intact. The Ashdown lights glowed softly in the mist, their silhouettes reflected in puddles. Lady Bedlington, Hastings, and Reverend Vaughan stood on the terrace, watching as Mr. Thompson and Mrs. Smythe helped the orphans back to their beds. Hastings turned to Lady Bedlington. "The caches held exactly what we needed: blankets, rope, lanterns. Simon's network has saved a life tonight." Lady Bedlington pressed her gloves to the lantern's copper petal. He lit the hidden flame so that, when the storm came, we could find our way. Let us honour this by ensuring the orphanage never goes unprotected again. Reverend Vaughan approached with Philip toddling at her side, clutching a small paper lantern he had painted in brighter times. The boy raised it shyly. "Darkest night or raging stream, one hidden spark shall guard our dream." Childlike voices behind him repeated the verse, and Lady Bedlington felt tears sting her eyes. Later that morning, the great hall filled with staff and villagers who had taken refuge through the tempest. Hastings demonstrated the hand-crank lantern's operation to an eager crowd. One turn of the handle produced minutes of clear light. Mrs. Smythe displayed the blankets and rope. Emergency stores now donated to St. Margaret's for future need. The children watched wide-eyed as Lady Bedlington announced, "From this day forward, Bedlington Villa's Hidden Flame Network shall include a public trust for the orphanage. An annual supply of emergency kits culled from our caches to be stored at their gates. So long as the lanterns glow, help will arrive in the storm." The villagers cheered, and the children clapped with pure delight. Lady Bedlington smiled at Poirot, who had arrived quietly just after the rescue to witness the aftermath. "Indeed, madam," Poirot said softly, "the true measure of a hidden flame is its power to kindle hope when darkness reigns." Hastings nodded. Simon's gift lives on, not only in secrets beneath the earth, but in open arms, ready to rescue those in need. That afternoon, as the sun emerged to dry the battered garden, the staff convened for a simple repast of warm stew and crusty bread. Lady Bedlington circulated among them, offering thanks and kind words. Hastings and Poirot sat together in the drawing-room, watching a fire rekindle in the hearth. Hastings sighed with satisfaction. "Our final test complete. The hidden flame network stands proven." Poirot cradled his teacup. "Yes, Hastings. And tonight, when the first lanterns light at dusk, they will shine with a new meaning, not only a signal of safety, but a beacon of compassion that saved a child's life." A knock sounded at the door. Lady Bathurst entered, her cheeks flushed from the storm. She approached Hastings and Poirot. "Lady Bedlington asked me to deliver this," she said, handing a small wooden box. Inside lay Philip's painted lantern, now waterproofed and bearing his verse, "One hidden spark shall guard our dream." Lady Bathurst smiled through tears. "May you hang this at the orphanage gate, so that every child knows a hidden flame watches over them." Poirot's eyes glowed. "A perfect symbol, madame." At dusk, the villa's grounds glimmered anew. The Ashdown lights and the paper lanterns Philip and his friends had painted now lined the route to the orphanage. Lady Bedlington, Hastings, Reverend Vaughan, and Mr. Thompson accompanied the children in a quiet procession through the rose garden's muddy paths. Each child's lantern was secured above a small emergency cache marker at the orphanage gate. A pouch of blankets, a hand-crank lantern, and fresh rope. The painted lanterns swung gently in the last light, promising aid before it was ever needed. Philip's lantern, shining bravely in the gathering gloom, hung by the gate alongside Simon's original Ashdown light, transferred in a ceremonial gesture. Hastings struck his match, igniting Philip's flame. Warmth and pride surged through the group. Lady Bedlington placed the final copper petal at the gate's arch. "Here," she said softly, "Simon's hidden flame watches over these children, and every soul who dwells in Bedlington's care." Poirot patted her hand. "From one spark, a blaze of kindness spreads, madame, a legacy that cannot be extinguished. Under the twin lights, emerald glass and paper silk, the children laughed and danced, and the adults stood in quiet contentment, knowing that through storm or shadow, the hidden flame would endure, guiding them all to safety and hope." Chapter 18. Dawn of Promise. A gentle haze hung over Bedlington Villa as the first light of morning brushed the rooftops in pale gold. Winter's last breath had passed, and in its wake the gardens glimmered with thawing dew. Lady Winifred Bedlington stood on the terrace, gazing at the rows of restored lanterns that would soon guide her guests through the winding paths. This morning marked not merely the close of one chapter, but the true beginning of all that Simon Ashdown had set in motion. As she inhaled the crisp air, memories of thunderous storms, hidden caches, and glowing paper lanterns danced through her mind, and settled into a quiet certainty that Bedlington Villa would never again face the dark unprepared. Behind her, Captain Hastings approached, his cane tapping softly on the terrace stones. "Good morning, madame," he said with a warm smile. "I trust you slept well after last night's celebration?" Lady Bedlington turned and returned his smile. "Restful, Arthur, more peaceful than I have known in a year. Last night's lantern's new dawn ceremony was everything I'd hoped and more." She swept a hand toward the garden below. "These electric replicas of the Ashdown lights will shine at dawn and dusk throughout the seasons. But it was the children's paper lanterns, carrying their own verses of hope, that truly affirmed Simon's legacy. He would have been proud." Hastings nodded. "Indeed, and every hidden cache we tested this morning remains secure. Simon's foresight endures, and his hidden flame still warms Bedlington's halls." Just then, Hercule Poirot emerged from the conservatory, his waxed moustaches impeccably curled and his eyes bright with satisfaction. He closed the door behind him and joined them on the terrace, carrying a small silver case embossed with copper petals. "Messieurs and madame," he began in his refined accent, "I have brought the final testament of Simon Ashdown's plan." He opened the case to reveal 12 folded letters, one for each cache marker, and a single emerald lantern charm, the master symbol of their network. Lady Bedlington stepped forward. "Monsieur Poirot, I cannot thank you enough. Your little grey cells have guided us through deception, sabotage, flood, storm, and flame. Yet you remained steadfast, ensuring Simon's hidden flame was never lost." Poirot bowed graciously. "Madame, I performed only my duty. The true hero of this tale is Simon Ashdown, whose wisdom crafted a network of trust that still guards you all. Yet he wished that those who tend the flame might carry reminders of his faith in humanity. These letters, his final words, are meant for the guardians of each cache, to be read only when that cache is opened in dire need." Hastings accepted the stack. "Then we shall distribute them accordingly, each placed beside the parchment, scroll already sealed within its underground niche." Lady Bedlington reached for the emerald charm. "And this final lantern token?" Poirot lifted the charm from its velvet cushion. This is the emblem of the Master Light, the original green lantern that first concealed the fatal sachet. Simon's last wish was that it hang in the pavilion, an eternal symbol that even the most hidden danger may be overcome by courage and compassion. Lady Bedlington touched the charm's smooth surface. Then tonight we shall install it in the central pavilion, beneath the rose arbour, where it may shine for all who pass this way. The sun climbed higher, and by midday the villa hummed with preparation. Mr. Thompson and Mrs. Smythe oversaw the placement of fresh rose petals along the terrace stairs. Mrs. Bryant polished the copper petals on each lantern base until they gleamed like new. The brass band played a lively march in the courtyard, and the orphanage children returned under Reverend Vaughan's watchful eye, each clutching a flower for the final dedication. Lady Bedlington, Hastings and Poirot convened one last time before gathering the letters and the master charm. At 3 o'clock sharp, they assembled beneath the rose arbour, its trellis now loaded with climbers in full bloom. The electric lanterns formed a soft canopy of light, and in the centre, awaiting its moment, stood an ornate bronze pedestal equipped with 3 hooks, one for Simon's master lantern and 2 for symbolic trinkets. Lady Bedlington stepped forward, letters in hand. She faced the assembled, the brass band, the villagers, the staff, and the children. Silence fell instantly. Friends, we have walked a long road from broken latches and secret threats to flood rescues and storm tests. Each trial affirmed Simon, Ashdown's foresight, and our own resolve. Today, we complete his design by placing his final words beside each hidden flame, and by installing his master charm at the heart of our garden. She handed the letters to Hastings, who distributed them among 4 footmen. Each would deliver a single letter to one of the 4 key staff members appointed as cash guardians: Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Smythe, Mrs. Bryant, and Reverend Vaughan, ensuring that future tests remained in the hands of the faithful. Lady Bedlington raised the emerald charm. And now, let us affix the master lantern token. She handed it to Poirot. With deliberate care, Poirot lifted the charm and hung it from the central hook. Hastings produced a lantern bulb, and Sir Lionel affixed it inside the glass casing above. At Lady Bedlington's signal, the bulb glowed emerald, casting a serene light over the assembled throng. A hush fell as the band paused its march. "Chedrichem, this light," Lady Bedlington intoned, "be the ever-during witness to truth and kindness. May every hidden flame it guards awaken hope in darkest times. And may our hearts, too, burn with the courage Simon Ashdown gave us." Reverend Vaughan stepped forward to offer a blessing. "O light unseen, yet ever near, guide the hearts that hold you dear. Let this emerald flame proclaim that love survives through ash and flame. Amen." A moment later, the brass band resumed with a soft hymn, and the villagers joined hands in a circle beneath the arbour. The orphanage children led a final chorus, their voices sweet and clear. "Under lanterns green and gold, we embrace the vows he told. Hidden flame and open heart, never from our home depart." As the hymn concluded, lanterns flickered in unison, and the assembled released a breath of collective joy. That evening, in the villa's grand dining hall, a modest supper awaited. The long table was laid with Simon's favourite fare: roast pheasant with winterberries, leek and potato soup, and honey-glazed carrots, followed by a plum pudding aflame with brandy. Above each plate lay a single rose-petal bookmark, crafted by Mrs. Bryant, inscribed with Simon's favourite phrase, "Light be my guide." Over wine and warm conversation, Lady Bedlington thanked her guests and staff for their steadfast devotion. Hastings leaned across to Poirot. "Another case resolved, Hercule, and this one's heart is not crime or mischief, but remembrance and trust." Poirot nodded, a soft smile on his lips. "Yes, Hastings. In our pursuit of darkness, we discovered the truest light, an enduring flame that no storm can extinguish. Lady Bedlington joined them, her eyes bright with gratitude. Thank you both for guiding us through every trial. You have given Bedlington Villa a legacy beyond measure." Poirot rose, tapping his cane with gentle authority. "Madam, the honour was mine. I depart at dawn, but this hidden flame network and your courage shall remain in my heart always." He allowed himself a final rare gesture. He unclasped his coat to reveal the emerald lantern pendant resting against his waistcoat. Hastings and Lady Bedlington exchanged glances of pride and affection. With that, Poirot took his leave, gathering his travelling cloak and lantern locket. Hastings escorted him to the front portico, where a carriage waited beneath the glowing lantern canopy. Lady Bedlington stood on the steps, her copper petals gleaming in the lamplight. "Until we meet again, Monsieur Poirot," she called softly, "may your path be lit by hidden flames, and your journey be free of shadow." Poirot raised a gentle salute. "Madame, may every flame you tend shine as brightly as the trust you have kindled here." With a final nod, he entered the carriage, and the horses trotted away down the lantern-lit drive. Lady Bedlington watched until the carriage's lamps faded into the night, the emerald glow of the master lantern still pulsing behind her. She closed the doors of Bedlington Villa and turned inward, the house aglow with its network of hidden lights, each cache a promise, each bulb a beacon, each petal a vow. Within its walls, laughter and warmth awaited, balanced by the silent knowledge that below rose beds and beneath arbour stones, Simon Ashdown's hidden flame would endure forever, ensuring that dawn's promise would always follow night's darkest hour.